Okay, so I want to impose my theory on you, and you tell me what you think. So for the past 15 years, I've been watching the feds, the FBI, the DOJ try to destroy you. And I've watched as no group of gatekeepers or whistleblower protectors or journalistic, ethics guardians have defended you on First Amendment grounds, which is pretty shocking. But the question has always been, why are the feds so intent on taking you out? And here's my theory. So the summer of 2001, you go on TV, time-stamped, and say someone's going to fly planes into the World Trade Centers. They're going to blame Osama bin Laden, call the Bush White House, warn them. You basically called 9/11 in detail. You're the only one who did. And we can prove that. It's not a guess. We have the tape. I've played the tape. 9/11 happens in September. There's a 9/11 commission immediately impaneled. They go and interview a bunch of people in the U.S. government and outside and ask, were there signs this was happening? They don't interview you. You're the one guy who predicted it in public. You're the only guy who predicted it in public, and no one calls you to ask, how the hell did you know that? Which is the obvious question. Then they set about trying to destroy you. Rather than hailing you as a prophet or at least asking the question, how the hell did Alex Jones know in detail this was coming? How did you know? They never even asked you. And then they mobilized DOJ and FBI against you. And I think there's a connection between those two facts.
Well, there certainly is. I'd already been researching false flag attacks, not just by our government, but other governments throughout history. The Gulf of Tonkin to get us into Vietnam in '64, that was later declassified to have been staged. And, of course, the USS Liberty between Israel and the Lyndon Baines Johnson administration wanted to get us into full war with Egypt. But the ship survived, became the most decorated ship in U.S. history because of the valiance of the crew. And Operation Ajax, where the CIA and Kermit Roosevelt in '53 overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh, who was a reformist and really pro-West, but he wouldn't give them all the oil. And they used radical Islamists to overthrow him and then put the Shah in and then overthrew the Shah. Over and over again, there's just hundreds and hundreds of historical real case examples of that being done by our government and other governments. And I saw a lot of pre-programming in the news. Oh, Osama bin Laden's going to get us. When he gets us, we need to give up all of our rights and to be a new America, and we've got to set up this police state. So I saw a lot of pre-programming.
But you called the specifics. You called the specifics of 9/11. I just can't get past that. And I've asked you in public and private, how did you do that? I've never gotten really a straight answer. I doubt I will now. But the fact remains, the incontrovertible fact, the provable fact that you called it, and then they began a campaign against you. And it's not because you're a racist. You've never been a racist or an anti-Semite or a crazy person, actually. You've never spewed hate. But you have, for 30 years, said the foundations of our system are actually kind of fake and rotten. But it was 9/11. That's when they really decided this guy has to be stopped and just basically eliminated the First Amendment to stop you.
Well, just to be clear, it's not that I'm dodging how I knew it. That was 24 years ago, and I remember what I was covering and what I was doing at the time. And everybody's seen the July 25th, where I went into detail, but actually my crew, using ChatGPT, scanning through all my old shows, found shows in April and even before that in March, where I get more specific. And I said the CIA is going to fly planes into the World Trade Centers and blame it on bin Laden.
So I just think that's the most amazing fact I've ever heard in my entire life, that you called that. And we can prove it because it's on tape with timestamps. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, okay, Alex Jones is crazy, a hater. Okay, whatever. I don't think that's true. But you called 9/11. And no investigator ever called you to ask you how you called that? How you knew that? Not one.
No.
No one from DOJ. Philip Zelikow of the 9/11 Commission never called you.
No.
Why?
Obviously because certain segments of our intelligence agencies with other foreign intelligence agencies were tracking the supposed hijackers. They were being trained at U.S. military bases. They were being given government money from our government and other governments. They were being protected. Then 2 of their magic passports, all that rubble and hundreds of millions of pieces of paper were found the next day to then connect them to it. It was all laid out. Then the bin Laden family was flown out of the country in the days after, and that was basically shut down in the news. It was covered some locally here in Florida. So I knew that bin Laden had been CIA going back to really the Mujahideen being set up by Zbigniew Brzezinski and Jimmy Carter. Then Reagan took that over, and then they kind of built that as blowback. But even recently, you've seen the U.S. aid information and other documents come out, the Institute for Peace, where they're directly paying massive amounts of money to Taliban, to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS, even in the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
And they use them as these proxy armies. So that was well known in the research circles that bin Laden was basically a multinational cutout used by Western intelligence agencies to destabilize areas, but also be a boogeyman. Then you see CNN in a mountain cave magically being able to find him, but the U.S. can't kill him and nobody else can. And I knew that CNN is literally the CIA broadcasting system.
For sure.
Total Mockingbird, thoroughbred. And there were hundreds and hundreds of points that went in, but okay, bin Laden's worked for the CIA. And you got CNN interviewing him, and they're all scaring us, saying he's about to attack us. And then I remembered how Ahmad Salam, who was an Egyptian intelligence agency operative working for the FBI and CIA, was hired to build a bomb in the early 90s to blow up the World Trade Center. But then when they said build a real bomb, he started recording them because he sort of figured out it was a setup. And then he had that press conference where he played it. I interviewed him a few times where the FBI said, no, just go ahead and let it go forward. And so you start adding all that together. They'd already tried to hit the World Trade Center before. The World Trade Center had a lot of issues in it with asbestos and also some of the structural issues. So they were already wanting to have a plan to get rid of it. And then you have the CIA and FBI in the Solomon Brothers building, Building 7, the 47-story skyscraper. You have that right next door. So I looked at all of it, and I thought, where would the new Pearl Harbor be? And the year before, in the Project for American Century, headed up by Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney wrote in there that we need a new Pearl Harbor event to launch the Pax Americana. But it wasn't an American empire of freedom and liberty and justice like Trump's trying to, launch. It was a globalist empire of military enforcement and tyranny. And so there was a lot of other data points that went into it. Cheney also writes in that same document, we need to look at race-specific bioweapons to have control and bring in our power. And that was actually picked up in the newspapers.
Okay, so these are not minor issues. These are like the biggest things happening in the world, the most important things happening in the world. And the end of one system, ushering in of a new system, millions in the end died because of all of this, millions. And you're on like cable access in Texas figuring this out. Like, where's everybody else? I don't understand. Like, I worked at CNN at the time. And we had as you said, Peter Bergen went and interviewed bin Laden. I'm not attacking Peter Bergen, but like, how come you were the only one who figured this out?
Yeah, by that time, I started out in 94 as a guest on Access TV and had my own show by 95, but I was on local talk radio. I just started getting, I've been syndicated a few years then, but you're right. I was on Access TV as well. And that's where
you were like way out on the fringe. And all the people at the very center of our business, journalism, like they didn't see or didn't talk publicly about any of this, none of this.
Well, I saw Gary Hart on with another guest.
Gary Hart, the former presidential candidate, senator from Colorado.
I think it was the Hart-Rubin Commission.
Yeah.
I saw him in Congress with testimony earlier that year, and also saw him on, I believe it was CNN, or maybe it was Chris Matthews, MSNBC, but the clip's famous. And they say the world's about to change. There's about to be big things happening, big attacks.
When was this?
It was in early July.
It was before 9/11.
Yes, and they were very specific. Somebody should find that clip, crowdsource that, and that was the final catalyst because they were basically telling the establishment, very thinly veiled, what was about to go on. So I sat back, I looked at it, and I thought years later, how did I come up with that? So I don't just say a bunch of stuff, then most of it doesn't come true. I'm very specific on predictions, and almost all of them have come true. I thought that it was the spinoff of the X-Files, and I wasn't even an X-Files fan, rarely watched it, called The Lone Gunman, that it turns out had come out in the spring of 2001 that I didn't even learn about because there wasn't, Facebook and Twitter and X back then. So if you didn't watch those entertainment shows, you didn't know about it. And then 6 months or so after 9/11, listeners started saying, have you seen this? And I had listeners send me VHS recordings off Fox TV of this episode where a criminal group in the U.S. government hijacks a jumbo jet in New York to fly it in the World Trade Center to blame it on a Central Asian terrorist so that they have a pretext to take over domestically with a police state and launch wars in the Middle East.
Wait, this was on the X-Files?
Yes, this was on the X-Files. And so later I thought maybe I got it from that. But then we found tapes even earlier, a month before that came out, where I was already had put it together on the radio. But here's what's crazy. Then I got reached out by some of the hosts of the X-Files saying, hey, Chris Carter told us that the CIA came to him with the plot of this and asked him some of the scripts that they would ask him as a favor to put this in as a TV program. And then later I corresponded with Chris Carter via email. He talked about this in the news, like in entertainment publications, about, Alex Jones is a really good guy. And when they rebooted in 2016 again, he talked about the talk show host characters based on me. So I've talked to him, some of his crew, but he said, no, I don't know why the CIA, you used to interview him, came to me and said, here's the script for this show. So it wasn't just Alex Jones saying that a government agency was going to hijack a jet and fly the World Trade Center. The X-Files spinoff, The Lone Gunman, one of its main episodes was about that specific story.
This is just crazy. So I often get, people I know saying,
and they remote control and hijack the jet, the good guys, and keep it from crashing the World Trade Center. So why would the CIA come to Chris Carter and say, we want you to write this? And then it's released months and months before 9/11. So I'm not the only one. It was in the collective unconsciousness. I don't know. But I said 2 weeks before they shot Trump in Butler, I went on air and I said they're going to try to shoot him at a rally. That's obvious to see how desperate they were. The lawfare didn't work. A lot of this is just studying how they operate. But so much of it now is John Podesta in August 2020, the New York Times wrote about it, had a big war game with the top Democrats. And they said if Trump wins, if they weren't able to steal it, in my view, then we're going to have civil war conditions. We're going to have blue states secede, blue cities, and we're going to use social issues to foment a rebellion that we're going to basically frame as racial, George Floyd on steroids, 10.0, and then we're going to drive Trump from office. Well, they were able to steal it, in my view. The evidence I think is overwhelming. So they didn't use that plan. Well, they started talking about that plan again in the months before this last election last year. So much of what I'm able to predict isn't really prediction. They admit it. The UN said for 20 years, we're going to use Disease X to bring in a global system, a global central bank digital currency, a global social credit score, a global vaccine ID that will be used as the global internet ID, global taxation ID. That's official Bill Gates, the UN, all these big bodies preparing how they'd roll this out. The Rockefeller Foundation with Operation Lockstep 2010, 2011, describing locking down the sports stadiums, locking your houses 6 feet apart, wearing masks for fear. And then Bush, George W. had that in the BioShield program that passed in 2005, where they sent out kits, millions of them, to everybody, to the Red Cross, with the 6 feet apart, with the mask, with all the stuff. But they didn't launch the bio attack scare that they had, I think, locked and loaded. Then they waited till 2020.
So basically, you're just taking them at their word. You're just you're doing what I don't do enough, which is listen to people I disagree with and sincerely try to assess what they're saying.
Fauci just said last week, a much worse, way higher morbidity. It's respiratory, it's coming. And you got hotels. Oh, don't worry. Trump's going to have a big problem. It's going to come crashing in on him. We'll see how he tries to reboot the economy. And then you learn Fauci and all of them are involved with Obama and Chapel Hill and North Carolina creating COVID-19. It was a big scandal in 2015, gain of function SARS. And then they move it to Wuhan to plausible deniability so they can kind of blame the Chinese if they want. I'm not saying the Chinese are good. The Communist Chinese are terrible. It was kind of a joint project. And then they roll it out. Then they've got their so-called shot that's mRNA. This stuff is all very well planned. And so when you see him up there lying going, no, Senator Paul, it is you that is wrong. No gain of function. Then it's in all his emails. This is gain of function. And he has public symposiums in defense of gain of function. He's Mr. Gain of Function. If he was a superhero, he would just, have gain of function on his chest and the back of his cape. And he's like, I don't know anything about that. And so, these guys just treat us like children. And so they kept saying, we're going to use a virus, we're going to use a scare to bring in our global government. I remember Lou Dobbs and Judicial Watch 2006 sued to get North American Union documents. And in it, they're meeting up in Banff, Canada, and they're like, we're going to use collapsing migration flow from a virus to flood the West and use that crisis to bring in a new Marshall Plan. We're going to use a disease X to, finally get the world to accept this global government. So they're just scheming constantly. They have Event 201.
But in public.
In public. They have the SPARS War Game 2025, 2028 that came out a few years before 2020 in the viral release that is actually set in 2020 to 2024. And it rolls out how they're all going to do it. The tweets that are in there, almost word for word, they just changed the name SPARS to COVID-19. So it's a blueprint. And then they get caught. Oh, it's not a viral attack plan. Oh, it's just a war game. But the war game matches the exact rollout of the attack, so they're all on script.
So in a normal world that rewarded, excellence and prescience, you'd be a billionaire because of your predictive powers. I mean, huge companies, governments hire people who can piece together fragments of evidence to create an accurate picture of the future. That's a huge business. I know a lot of people in that business. George Friedman, guys like that, really, really smart people. But you've got the best track record of all. And I think it's so telling that rather than reward you for this or call you up and be like, Alex Jones, you're like, what do you think's coming next? They're like, no, we must eliminate our own First Amendment to destroy your life, which is what they've done. That seems like a pretty clear indicator of their guilt to me.
Well, what they don't want is compartmentalize good people in industry and government, not just around the world, to listen to what I'm saying, go check it out for themselves, find out everything I just said is on record. Anybody can just type in anything I said, and it's from their own documents. And then people will basically put the glasses on like they live and see it for themselves. I'm not telling them what to see like the corporate media does, brainwashing people and selling them a lie that two men can have a baby and there's no extra Y chromosomes and communism's great and open borders are wonderful. No, I mean, I'm simply saying see this for yourself. I liken it to those hidden image paintings. And when you first can't see the hidden image, you're like, I can't see. Once you do see it, you can't unsee it. So I'm only trying to get people to go look at what I'm pointing out and find out. I liken this whole thing to like you have the adult table with the CFR, the Club of Rome, the WF, and the UN, the think tanks, the RAND Corporation, and they're at the adult table at Thanksgiving, and the general public and even a lot of the politicians are compartmentalized and naive. We're over at the kids' table, and we'd actually listen to what the adult table, because that's their arrogance. They admit 99% of this in their own battle plans, as if we are too lazy or stupid to ever go look at it. And that's part of a confidence game they have with their own people, their own corporate intelligence operatives, their own government intelligence operatives, their own networks, where they just basically admit all this stuff out in the open. I mean, it's like, Mudd from the CIA on CNN saying, Foggy Bottom's going to kill this guy. We're going to kill Trump. And then Trump had called me, this is back in his first administration. I said, listen, you need to watch out. They've got Phil Mudd and all these other guys on CNN, MSNBC saying they're going to kill you. And he goes, just a moment. He goes, I'm going to have the Secret Service call you. In about an hour, they call me. They go, what's going on, Alex? Trump told us to call you. And I said, you don't know about this. So he goes, okay, here's our email. And I sent the Secret Service this, as if the Secret Service doesn't know they were all over TV saying we're going to kill Trump. So
it's possible they caught that, yeah.
Yeah, and then Trump didn't catch it. And I mean, now they're everywhere. You've got this new Rutgers study out where 55% of Democrats, liberals, are asked, do you support Trump being killed? They're like, yes, we want him dead. He should be assassinated. This is this week. And came out over the weekend. And they asked him, so do you see yourself as part of a assassination culture? And they said, yes. So, but then if you say, oh, the Democrats are fomenting violence, I mean, The View says all the time, he's killing people. Elon's killing people. They don't say how. They're stealing your Social Security. They're killing old ladies. And so we need to be ready to fight and die to take this guy out. Those are quotes. And then they just sit back and go, oh, no. We're not calling for violence with Crockett and all of them. But they're not going to do it. They want lone nuts to do it because their other wind-up operatives like Crooks and the other guy here in Florida failed. But, I mean, they are crazy. And if the establishment, or what's left of it's falling apart, thinks killing Trump is going to help them, they're delusional, because if you look at all the scenarios that come out of that, it's much worse for them.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. Not all sleep aids are made by pharmaceutical companies. You probably heard about 8 Sleep by now. They developed the country's most innovative products for sleep. almost everybody in our office uses something they may call the pod, and they love it. And there's a reason that professional athletes and lots of other smart people do too. You add the pod to your mattress like a mattress cover, and it helps you get a better night's sleep and fill with vitality at the start of each day in an intimidating way almost. It's amazing. How does it do it? Well, it uses advanced technology to track your sleep and automatically adjust the temperature of your side of the bed to what's perfect for sleep. And temperature makes all the difference. It's backed by over 600 million hours of data. They've also used those insights to create their new product, Sleep Elixir, to help you get quiet before you go to bed, fall asleep faster, and stay knocked out longer. No grogginess, no weird side effects, just better deep sleep. So if you're ready to take sleep and recovery to the next level, go to 8sleep.com/Tucker to get $350 off your Pod 4 Ultra full refund for 30 days if you don't love it. It works. Before I ask you what you think the signs are pointing to now, like what are your predictions for the next 5 years? And then I ask you how your battles with the U.S. government are going in its attempts to silence you. How do you, like, if you have this ability, which you do, I'm not sucking up, it's just, again, it's provable, to put together a picture, an extraordinarily accurate picture of what the future holds, like, what does that do to you? How do you sleep and how do you live? And, like, why haven't you totally destroyed yourself? Like, those are kind of not thoughts that most people, including me, are burdened with and don't really want to be burdened with. But, like, how do you turn off the visions of the future in your head?
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying nice things about me, and obviously God gives us all different gifts, and I do have some gifts. But I think a lot more people have these gifts than really realize it.
But you can prove it. That's why obviously we're friends, and I like you as a man, but you can prove it in a way that others can't because it's on tape. So it's not really a debate. Has Alex Jones had, more accurate predictions of the future than any living person in the world that I know of? We can prove that. We don't have to argue about it. I've got the freaking tape. So again, it's not even a compliment. It's just an observation. And I don't know why I seem to be the only person who's obsessed with this. Like, how did this guy predict this? No, everyone's like, oh, he's crazy. Okay, maybe he's crazy, but he predicted this. So my question is, like, what does that do to you?
I mean, it is stressful, the responsibility of constantly researching and looking at all culture, pop culture. That's where a lot of the real brainwashing's at. That's where a lot of the predictive programming and manipulation goes on.
Yes.
But also in so-called news. But I mean, I did get to where I drank way too much, ate too much, got really unhealthy because I could, go home at night and have some drinks and and eat half a key lime pie and just kind of dial out and forget about reality. But things have gotten so intense and so dangerous that for about the last 9 months, I haven't drank. And I've been exercising every day, and I've lost 63 pounds, and I feel great. And I've just embraced the responsibility. Plus, we're alive right now, really in the Great Awakening, where more and more people are piecing things together and deciding to really get informed and engaged. And so I've always said I want to become obsolete, where people really start understanding how the world really works to such an extent that there are so many other journalists and researchers and pundits, and just private citizens and people in business and academia and life, and in the ecclesiastical circles, that they really realize that this globalist system is transhumanist, it is evil, it is a spiritual battle at the end of the day, and people need to really choose a side. And so I think choosing the side and saying, hey, God, I can't do this, I'm weak, I'm imperfect, but through you I can, and really praying and asking God to lead, God, and direct you and give you discernment. So to really answer your question, I'll have all this data and this research, and so that my feeble human mind can understand really what God tells me. And then it's that final little ingredient of being sure about something, that's what they're intending to do. But we have real agency. Good has more power than evil. They always say the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world that he didn't exist. I think that's the second biggest trick, is that he doesn't exist, and he does. His biggest trick is convincing people that there is no good out there, and that there's not.
That's right.
And that God doesn't exist. So, for me, so much of it again is in the old days, the globalists, the Western propaganda after the end of World War II, and since then, when we won World War II, had pretty much total narrative control. And so anything they were pre-programming and preparing and hyping the people for, they pretty much always got what they wanted. So it was easy to follow those trend lines out and see what the probable main scenarios were. And then things would almost always come true that I predicted because they were still in charge. Now that the globalists are really collapsing and a new international order and system is forming, coming from the grassroots up, politics is downstream from the grassroots. And because Trump is such a chaos bringer to their system, which is good, but with it also comes danger. But it's better than living, on our knees and then ending up having our souls basically taken. It's better to fight down our feet. But in my experience, people that fight on their feet live a lot longer and have better lives than people that try to live on their knees. People that live on their knees actually die on their knees a lot more often than people who die on their feet, in my experience. So now is really the global revolution. It's a spiritual revolution. The information, the culture, all of that comes out of that. And so now there's so many possible futures and so many developments because there's been so many good people that actually care and want to stabilize civilization and thrive and have a future and who are not based on conquest mindsets, but are based on Renaissance concepts, the Great Reset versus the Great Awakening, that right now anything is possible because America still has the world reserve currency, still has the biggest, best military, still has the best energy system for raw energy, and still has a spirit that is being rekindled that was the apple of the world's eye and really the flower of the Renaissance that we're now rebooting. It's powering back up right now. And that window is closing, but we're acting on it right now. And if we're just not weak and cowards, like Trump has said, and if we don't become panicans but remain Americans, then really anything is possible because, as Elon has said, if America falls, the central pillar in Western civilization, and Western civilization falls, it all falls.
Yes.
And so for me, I don't do this out of courage. I do it out of direct self-preservation for myself, my family, and by extension, everybody else, because we're all interconnected. And people need to understand the true urgency that the globalists said they were going to collapse the world economy and use that for social control, as Larry Fink said, to control our behavior. And we're going to build something extremely hellscapish and dystopic in their own admissions. All the horrible stuff we see is just the leading, edge of it. And so to me, there's really even no choice but to fight with everything I've got.
So you said you said two things that really struck me. One, that anything is possible right now. This could go in an infinite number of directions, some hellish and some blessed. And so I think that feels right to me. Second, you said this is a spiritual revolution. What are the signs that you see of that? What do you mean by that?
Well, if you read the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, it's all there. And then I see it happening. It says that during these big times of change, that you'll see the best out of the good people and the worst out of the bad people. And some people you thought were good are going to really activate and show you their real cards, that they're really your servants of evil or really slaves of evil. And then you're going to see some people you thought weren't good that are going to be touched and make the decision to be strong for liberty. That'll be some of our greatest champions.
Yes.
And that you're not going to really see people in the middle anymore, that big middle of people passing the buck. God said you were hot nor cold. You were lukewarm. I spit you out of my mouth. And so we're going into really the beginning. It's going to get way more intense in my view. If any prediction, it's that. If people think things are wild now and tumultuous, this is going to be seen as the calm before the storm. And so there's going to be nowhere to be in the middle. People are going to have to choose a side. And those that have chosen evil, chosen the establishment, chosen the satanic world order, are going to get deeper and deeper into their devotion, their hysteria, their violence, trying to prop it up, because deep down they're scared, and they have a form of Stockholm syndrome where they go to the abuser and think if they prostrate themselves before it, somehow they'll be given deliverance, when really they just need to repent and ask God to come in to their heart and cleanse them and then rise them up to be a soldier against this evil in this key time. But there'll be no room for anybody in the middle in the time we're in. And I'm talking to so many people that weren't even Christian or weren't even religious or weren't even spiritual, who are saying it's good versus evil. And I talk to so many people I know that are professionals, and they, Austin's full of a lot of, particularly rich people and women, just becoming demon possessed. I mean, literally saying that they're demon possessed. And I'm hearing about it all over the country, all over the world.
What is that? It's so noticeable. And I'm so blessed to be surrounded mostly by women who are just the opposite, who are wonderful, who are the rock. I mean, they're just the best. However, what you just described is just on display everywhere.
Well, and it's men too. You hear about the soccer coach that just kidnapped a little kid and took him and killed him and threw him in the woods, reportedly, allegedly. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's men too, but normally in history, it's men that do the really openly satanic stuff.
Yes, exactly.
And women, 2% of violent crime. Now it's because it's a crisis. And women particularly, but men as well, buy into whatever they see as the power structure. That's a survival mechanism generally.
That's exactly right.
But when the power structure is a death cult, by increment, they get deeper and deeper. I mean, you look at these leftists, and them in the hundreds of photos where they took their shot, and they had their abortion, or they want to kill Trump, and you look at them,
or they're worshiping death in some way.
Absolutely, and you can see it. They all look super unhealthy. They look totally insane in the eyes. They all look like Charlie Manson, and so it's. I've seen more and more love in people's eyes.
Yes.
More and more spiritual connection to God. More and more of that quiet place of just serenity in people. And then I'm seeing more and more of the satanic energy. So it's really a parting of the sea here.
Yes. So to just linger on the first observation that you're seeing more of the serenity, the peace from God in people, that is including people in your orbit, people you know personally?
Yes. But it's very paradoxical. I'm seeing just godliness, peace, understanding, and then I'm seeing confusion and hysteria. And I mean, what we're seeing is evil writhing around, trying to take us with it. It gets senses that humanity's waking up, and that all of its carefully laid plans to keep us in a trance, keep us asleep, is burning away.
Is there any way to predict? Well, I'll just say my view, which is I've been really shocked by people on both sides. There are people who seem totally seized by hysteria and rage and hate and the desire to commit violence. We never expected they would be that. And then there are other people who I'm equally shocked to see filled with the kind of serenity you're describing, who are filled with love and understanding. And I couldn't have predicted who those people are in some cases. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always had a lot of berserker energy and
true.
And in the fight, but it was always focused, and I wouldn't say it was demonic, but it was of the flesh, but I also had a big connection to God. Now more and more, I'm just have serenity, focus, clarity, and I'm more effective at breaking things down, not acting like a Tasmanian devil. And so in my own life, I'm seeing more and more of that serenity, just really, really intense the last few weeks. And I picked up on that being around you and your crew and, folks here in this little hamlet we're in.
Shut up.
And then it really does make you feel sorry for people that serve evil. I mean, they torture us and they attack us and they want to bully us. But at the end of the day, you actually realize that's on them. It is so sad that they live like this.
They're being destroyed too. They're being destroyed too. That's like one of the main insights I've had in the past 5 years. I come to things really slowly because I'm not a genius, but I always kind of felt hate toward the destroyers in any society. I hate destruction. I like building and creation. But the destroyers always were, I felt, my enemies. And my whole life I felt this. And then it was only in the last couple of years I realized they're being destroyed also. Like they are suffering. They're not getting out of this unscathed. Like they think that they're getting power or whatever money, whatever they think they're getting. But they're like in agony.
Well, a lot of them are cowards too, and they think survival of the fittest, just being as ruthless and mean as possible, is what they have to do to win. And then when you no longer hate them, because I was never driven by hate as my main force. It's the old saying, you don't fight an enemy attacking your people because you hate them. You fight them because you love the people you're defending.
Exactly.
But still, I would always hear, no, forgive them, still fight them, still expose them, but really forgive them. That removes the spiritual connection that you have with them. And you see it when Christ says, be kind and pray for those that persecute you. It'll heap burning coals on their head. Stalkers, down at the kind of the low level. I've learned, like, once I didn't care about a stalker and I've had plenty and you just forgive them, they just freak out and go away. When they're getting to you, they're enjoying that energy. So you still fight them with more energy than ever, but you do it from a position of just removing a damaged, collapsed, poor victim of the devil. that you have a responsibility to protect yourself and your family from, but you don't give them the energy of being angry back at them and seeing them as powerful, because they're not, they're pawns. And these people that are influenced by satanic energy, by literal spiritual forces, demons, they are the slaves. And when they're not out doing evil and persecuting people, they don't even feel like they're alive, and they're desperate and they're scared and they're lost. And then they get driven forward, by this dark force to like, it'll be all right once you just go out and once you take these people out. It's the good people that are making you feel bad. It's them. Destroy them, then you'll have peace. And that's the deeper understanding I've had of how this satanic system works.
It's so clearly true. And if you ask if there's anyone that you've really focused on, I don't know, George Soros or Larry Fink. I mean, just the other day, I was talking to someone who knows Larry Fink really well. And I was saying, I think Larry Fink is, I don't know, I've never met Larry Fink, but he's responsible for a lot of suffering from my perspective. And, this person said there's no one more unhappy than Larry Fink, nobody. And I was just with him in a car. He was screaming at someone on the phone. This guy's made billions of dollars and personally tormented. And I know a bunch of people, because I know a lot of the people involved in things that I think are really evil, and there's not a happy one among them, not one.
And beyond the fact that he's got billions, he's in control of more than anybody. We're always hearing Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world. Well, he's a guy that has been good at keeping the companies under his control. So he independently is the most powerful person, corporate, science, communications, titan. But then they spin it like, oh, he's the establishment. No, Trump, as you know, has a very small orbit of independent billionaires that are defending him because they want to stabilize civilization for everybody's good. But when you look at the international power and the largesse, it's been against Trump. More and more they realize they're losing because the people are with Trump. And we were just talking last night. I hope you would repeat that because you were asking me, there's some folks we were talking to about what my view is basically on the geopolitical new landscape. And I laid my view, and you said, no, I think that's dead on. And then you said, basically, if you feel like repeating it, that we need to sell it very clearly. You're on this team or you're on that team, because it really is Team Chi-Com, EU, globalist, New World Order. That's what's left. The UK, don't trust him who runs it, but they're trying to come in under a U.S. alliance. And America and the world needs to understand there's a new international system forming. The old one fell. And we better decide what this new system is going to look like and who's going to be in charge of it, because that's the way it is.
So think about how you'll feel when you achieve your biggest goals of all, whether it's starting a business, paying off your mortgage, sending your kids to college, and having the money to pay for it. You'll be pretty proud when you've met these essential life goals, and you should be proud. All of us are when we do that. But what do you do next? So getting to the goals is one thing, but protecting them is an entirely different thing and maybe a bigger thing. And this is where life insurance from Policy Genius comes in. Now, Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance really easy. You probably want life insurance, but it's expensive, and how do you even get it? Policy Genius makes it simple, and it means that your family has the safety net it needs to cover expenses and to face the future. Nearly half of Americans look back and wish they'd gotten life insurance earlier. It can change everything if you have it, because you don't know what the future holds, honestly. So with Policy Genius, you can find policies starting at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. And some options are 100% online. And that means no unnecessary medical exams for you, which is a win. You compare quotes from top insurers side by side. You talk to licensed agents. You secure your families tomorrow with peace of mind today. And it makes it super easy on Policy Genius. And it's all transparent. You know exactly what you're getting. So you head to policygenius.com/Tucker. You click the link in the description to get your free quote. That's policygenius.com/Tucker. Yeah, and you hope that questions like that are almost never resolved without big wars. Unfortunately, you can't think of too many examples, or really any in history, where they have just sort of evolved gracefully. It's a lot of people die, and that's the point. Rome falls in the 5th century, new system or whatever. And I really hope that we can escape that. And I'm very opposed to violence and war. So I think we should all be working toward that. But it's the big things that matter. And you have the rise of this superpower in the East. And that's the main fact of the moment that we live in, is that the West is falling. I think it's been undermined from within by people like Larry Fink and many, many others. And but it's being replaced by this by this threat from the East. And I don't hate the Chinese at all. I think they're acting in what they think is their best interest. They're not Christian. They hate Christianity. So they've got a totally different worldview. And I'm not mad at them about it. But I think we should be honest about what it is, right? We're not going to have like, the United States and Russia and Iran and Malaysia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, China is all sort of acting in their own spheres. That's not the way it works.
And as you said last night, all these countries want to be on Team America.
I think that's right.
And for people that don't know this, and I'm surprised, Trump understands that you do, but this needs to be everywhere. The globalists went in the 80s, 90s. They made a deal with Communist China. You get the manufacturing rare earth minerals, but you don't expand your military into the South China Sea. Well, they started 20 years ago expanding everywhere. And then it took Obama until about 14 years ago to figure that out. We had the Asia pivot, but by then it was too late. They'd infiltrated Congress. They were financing all this destroy America wokeism and bragging about it. And then people like Bill Gates and others continue to be totally aligned with China.
No, that's right.
And the CFR saying America's over, and Larry Fink making jokes about it just 3 or 4 years ago. Ha, ha, ha. 5 years ago, Trump thinks he'll bring America back. Ha, ha, ha. He hasn't seen China. Very arrogant. And now that China's even double-crossing the globalists and saying, we don't even need you, and Xi Jinping's like, we're going to pay people to have kids. We're not doing your one-child policy anymore. They're breaking with the transhumanist, angle, but using the control grid, the cashless society, social credit score that the West helped them set up to now project out around the world. And so the globalists are being destroyed by their own Frankenstein monster. And then the EU's decided to ally with China. And again, the UK is, at least on the surface, acting like, no, they want to be in a new Anglophile alliance with the, quote, U.S. empire. And again, the U.S. has a limited window to get everybody on board with us, and then our alliance easily with the key countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, central among it, and some other alliances, and then obviously an open economic alliance with Russia, who wants an economic alliance and has more resources than any country in the world. That is the real chessboard, and that's why the left and the globalists want to drive America and Russia apart, because geographically,
exactly,
and also militarily, and then also scientifically, and then just raw material.
Of course,
that is the obvious.
If you believe Russia's our greatest enemy, if you are working full time to divide the United States from Russia, you are acting against the interests of the United States. You hate the United States. You hate the West. You want to see it fall. They hate Russia because it's a white Christian country. That's a fact. Why Russia? In all of this, once you take 3 steps back, makes perfect sense. Like, we have a lot of people in our country working actively for the destruction of the West, of Christian civilization. So that's just a fact.
Because it stands in the way.
Sorry, they don't. People don't like it when you say that, but they don't like it when you say it because it's absolutely true. And the farther you get from the United States, that's one of the great benefits of travel. The more obvious it is. Like, you don't know you're married to an alcoholic until you go on vacation without that person. You're like, oh shit, I'm married to an alcoholic. Like, you can't see any of this when you're in the middle of it, but when you leave, it's like, oh my gosh. So, okay, I just want to go back a step. So you have made reference a couple of times to the rise in violence, the acceptance of violence, which is, of course, the purest distillation of evil, in my opinion, most obvious for sure. And there are signs that it's, we're entering a violent stage. I pray that we're not, but it feels like we are. You just had a longtime employee assassinated. I don't know the extent to which you want to talk about that, but what was that? Is it a harbinger of things to come?
Well, a month ago, Jamie White, a great reporter, great guy. We were working up there Sunday night till about 9 o'clock. I left. He went home and then got shot through the carotid artery, 1 shot through his neck, and then out the back, and then he bled to death. By the time I got to the hospital, about 15 minutes later, the police got there very quick.
How old was he?
He was 36.
Ugh.
And he was on the Ukraine hit list, along with myself and you and a bunch of other people. And everybody getting the SWAT calls, the SWAT teams sent to their houses, and their families has been on that list as well.
Which is basically everyone you know.
Yes. And then, of course, Ukraine tortured American journalist Gonzalo Lira to death and then celebrated that. And so... And of course, we have the would-be assassin down in Mar-a-Lago, who was a big leftist, connected to all these intelligence agencies, recruiting hundreds of fighters for Ukraine, an American. Then he comes back and tries to kill Trump. So I think, you've seen Alexander Dugin's daughter blown up in front of him in 2022.
In Moscow by the Ukrainians.
In Moscow.
Murdering a guy's daughter, applauded by Anne Applebaum and all the rest of the ghouls in the United States effectively because they don't like Alexander Dugin's ideas, so it's okay to murder his daughter with the,
Well, that's the new, that's
clearly the help of U.S. intel agencies. Let's stop lying about it, right? CIA.
Absolutely. I said 3+ years ago when the war started, I said the U.S. is running all the targeting.
Of course they are.
With the weapons. That's just a fact. And with their soldiers on the ground, as I know, some of the people whose sons are there, when it all started, were really nervous. They didn't give me details. They're like, yeah, your sons are there, special operations. And there's been a lot of
U.S. military personnel fighting Russia in Ukraine.
Absolutely. I'm on record 3 years ago saying that. And then 2 weeks ago, New York Times, the U.S. has been running the war and been there the whole time. And, get a Pulitzer Prize. So that was all known. And so now Trump is trying to rightfully end it. People that don't know, I know your audience knows, but we have Victoria Nuland, we have Soros, back when he could still talk, on Fareed Zakaria on CNN saying, oh, yeah, we went there with State Department money and overthrew their government 15 years ago. And we did it again. And we're finally going to break up Russia. And I'm going to be the czar of Russia. 5 weeks ago, they had the deputy head of the unelected EU Commission say, oh, we're going to keep this war going for decades. And we're going to bankrupt Russia with it. And we're going to break Russia in 5 parts. So they're on the news saying, we want peace. We want love. Oh, no, Ukraine will never join NATO, which is why Putin went in. And the weapons being brought in to his border. And then separately, Zelensky's always, no, I join NATO. And so, again, the West started this war. Imagine if Russia...
I'm aware, yeah.
I know you know more better than anybody, probably.
No, it just
hasn't circled. You've actually...
Yeah.
Any American journalist, you've been everywhere. You've documented it. And it's just, we're starting the fight. These crazies are dragging us in to what's really already World War III conventionally, that every escalation moves us closer to nuclear war. The doomsday clock with the atomic energy scientists was the closest it's ever been. And so this is really fundamental. And so any concern I have about being sued or lawfared or attacked doesn't even hit my psychological, spiritual, mental radar, because the big threat is so big of what these megalomaniacs are doing.
So one thing one fact I don't think is penetrated the brains of policymakers in Washington is that we just lost a war with Russia. The U.S. was running that war, the U.S. military, the Pentagon, State Department, CIA, running the war against Russia. It was never about Ukraine. No one in Washington cares about Ukraine or the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men destroyed. The fact it'll be populated by third worlders. Ukraine, we just eliminated Ukraine. Nobody cares. This was a war against Russia. They hate Russia for a lot of reasons, mostly spiritual. But we lost. And my concern is, because nobody will say that out loud, that we're overstating our power. And in the same way that you sometimes see divorced 60-year-old guys hitting on young women and don't realize that the young women think this is absurd. You're like an old man. Why? You really think I'm going to sleep with you? But the 60-year-old guy hasn't readjusted to the reality of his present condition. He still thinks he's 25. Do you see what I'm saying? And he humiliates himself. That can happen at the level of nations, where, you think you can affect outcomes that you actually don't have the power to bring about. And so that's called hubris, and that's how empires get destroyed and populations vaporized. And I'm really afraid of that. Why can't we should know that we were not able to win a conventional war against Russia, period. So what does that say about our power? And maybe we should readjust our expectations a little bit. I don't want that to be true, by the way. I'm American. I'm not leaving. My family's buried here. But don't you think that we run the risk of thinking we're capable of things that we're not capable of doing?
Well, it's an example. Hillary had a lot of fraud baked in, but Trump won in such a landslide, he beat her. And then a lot of Republicans and conservatives and populists thought Trump was going to win for sure, so we'd have as big a turnout, so they were able to steal 2020. But there was such a giant landslide this time, it overrode the mail-in ballots, the dead people, the illegal aliens voting, all of that. They ran out of bullets. But that's a perfect example of how the Democrats were sure they were going to win in November last year. And they were sure they were going to win in November in 2016, and they didn't. So they had this incredible hubris and this incredible arrogance. And so many of them are actually militarily ignorant themselves. They just put on this big imperious act. And of course, there's the clip of Sean Penn saying, well, I don't think nuclear weapons should be off the table. We shouldn't be afraid to use them because that gives Russia an advantage. Well, it's called mutually assured destruction for a reason, because anybody that uses them is insane.
Well, they got in the middle of the war. This just came out the other day. The Pentagon wrote an assessment saying that they calculated that if we gave weapons to Ukraine that allowed the Ukrainian military or our military using Ukraine as a proxy to hit targets within Russia, they judged the likelihood of a nuclear exchange at 50%. Mm-hmm. And they did it anyway. At that point, like, you should be in prison for the criminally insane.
Well, that's right. If Russia moved...
You're risking nuclear war? Like, you should be locked up. I don't understand. Like, I couldn't even believe that. I mean, I, of course, intuitively knew that.
And say that again, because I interrupted. That's important to sink in for people.
That the Pentagon under Joe Biden assessed, like, because they assess the likelihood of everything, or they guess, they sort of work out how they think things will progress. But in every scenario globally, they do this. This is what they do at the Pentagon. And they assessed that if we gave certain weapons that allowed the Ukrainians to strike targets within Russia, if we did that, which we did, the chance of a nuclear exchange, a nuclear holocaust that killed everybody on Earth, would be 50%. And they did it anyway. So imagine the brain, imagine the evil. Like, you would have to be controlled by, like, supernatural forces to do something. I think there's a 50% chance every person on Earth could be killed in a nuclear exchange, but I'm doing it anyway. Like, how are you still walking free? I'm serious.
No, and I'm glad you brought that assessment up, because I've really tried to get people to focus on that. And I agree with that assessment. I mean, let's boil that down. Imagine if Russia had the equivalent of ATACMS and Storm Shadows in Canada, in Mexico, on our border, that they can fire above the trees that can't be shot down, that are nuclear capable. And Putin said this. He said, if you shoot a few missiles once it started, we'll just shoot them down. But if we see a large aerospace attack with a whole bunch of these, we have to believe it is a first strike to take out our nuclear deterrent. And so when we see a large signature of a large aerospace attack, be it cruise missiles, be it glide bombs, be it a mix of aircraft, or all of them, we will do a total commitment. And then Russian TV said, here's the government scenario. And it showed nukes hitting all the NATO countries and submarines, hitting on from there. And we're talking about world destroyed in 30 minutes, folks, for sure. Submarines off our coast, 2 minutes, New York's gone. 5 minutes, Dallas is gone. This is real. What would happen if Russia was bombing D.C. with conventional bombs, with large, heavy cruise missiles? That
droning the capital. As the U.S. did through the Ukrainians, they droned the Kremlin.
You were there once when you saw one blow up?
I was there. I was actually driving by when I was over there last winter to interview Putin. I was driving by the Kremlin, just like on the street in downtown Moscow, smoke coming out of the top of the Kremlin. And so I called the guy at the press office who I was dealing with to set up the Putin interview from the vehicle, and I was like, "I think your Kremlin's on fire." And he's like, "Oh, no, it's not." I was like, "I'm right there. I'm looking at it." Russians never want to admit that they have been unable to defend their capital city. So a lot of murder has taken place by the Ukrainians of Russians and of attempted murder of Americans, by the way.
And just think about the provocation here.
But the Russians in every case are like, "Oh, that's not happening." They don't want to admit it because for a bunch of reasons, but it would force them to respond. But anyway, I called up and I'm like, I think you guys just got droned. No, didn't happen. But it did happen. I saw it. I personally saw it. So, like, there's been a ton of that stuff. What would we do if the Russians droned the U.S. Capitol or the White House? Like, that's so freaking crazy.
Well, Russia knows it's a provocation. The globalists want to reset. Their financial system's going down, and they're willing to roll the dice, and they think a nuclear war is survivable, as you know, as the Pentagon has said. So it's complete madness.
Nuclear war is not survivable. That's a fact.
It's not.
By the way, nuclear weapon explodes over a nuclear power plant. What happens? Does anyone know?
Massive meltdown that makes Fukushima look like a
exactly. And we have a lot of nuclear power plants around the world. So
there's over 450 that are big industrial, thousands of small ones. And when society breaks down, they all melt down in different ways, much worse than Fukushima and Chernobyl combined.
I agree.
And it makes the whole surface of the earth, that's mainline science, unlivable for hundreds of millions of years.
I agree. And I know everyone's for nuclear power, and it's like, obvious we need nuclear power. I don't, okay, I'm not against nuclear power in theory, but until someone can answer the question you just posed, like, what about that?
Then plus, they're never run right. They always have scenarios where they're not going to leak. Basically, they all leak.
You see all these stupid conservatives like, the answer is nuclear. You want more AI data centers, comma, which I don't.
The answer is coal.
Obviously, but I don't understand why everyone... this is such a sidebar, and I'll stop in one sentence, but like those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s remember that all the opponents to nuclear power were like, furry armpit dumb people. And, all the Greenpeace people. And so you're just like, oh, shut up. Nuclear is obviously the solution. Like, you just don't understand science. How can you be against climate change and also against nuclear power? I've said that myself like 100 times on TV. But it's not about the spent fuel rods. What do we do with nuclear waste? That's easy. Put it in Yucca Mountain. It's about what if these things are untended? What if they're the subject of a conventional or nuclear attack?
And you look at all the mismanagement.
There's massive vulnerability. Like, why doesn't anyone mention that? Before we put nuclear power plants all over my country, which I think a lot of people are psyched to do because they want to get rich from AI, like, they should answer the question. That's really freaking scary, no?
Well, you have to also ask, why do they build so many here and in, like, Japan, the plants right on fault lines? I mean, there's we see a lot of ineptitude in industry and things, so you don't want to have things that have the potential to be so dangerous. And when coal creates carbon dioxide that plants breathe, and the earth used to have a lot higher carbon dioxide than it does now, and it makes plants live longer, yields are up, it will green the planet, all the studies show it. We're actually terraforming the earth to make it better. It's like God-given. When you actually look at the real studies and talk to the real climatologists, the people, they'll tell you, no, it's great that we're bringing this old carbon back up and putting it back in the atmosphere. This is fabulous. More carbon is good. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, and sunlight are the 4 ingredients of life on this planet. And the globalists created a way to tax and regulate one of the 4 pillars of life on this planet. It is good. I mean, they try to convince us that cows' methane is bad. You actually look at the carbon equation, it all turns right back into the gases it came from. It's a good gas. But again, if the cows are bad, well, what else releases methane? We do. We're the carbon that they want to reduce. They want to teach us to hate ourselves, teach us not to have a life force, and their new religion is they will give us all these indulgences and all these flagellations and all these things we have to do to atone for how bad we are to the priest class that is the big satanic green church.
So the threat of nuclear war overhangs any conflict with a country that has nuclear weapons, of course. You push someone far enough, you don't know what could happen, and it could result in the extinction of humanity. So that's like the main fact. That's why people want to run, not to have nukes, right? Obviously. So with that in mind, what do you make of the repeated public statements by a bunch of European leaders, particularly Starmer in the UK and the president of France, that they're ready to continue the war against Russia with their own feeble armies? Like, that seems crazy to me. What is that actually about?
And they've said that now they're sending their troops, that if they get killed, then that's direct war with NATO. They admit that the EU population-wise is collapsing. Those they've brought in, most of them, 80%, never even get jobs. That all the different ministers, defense ministers, as you know, the last few years have said, our business model is a 20-year war. They think they can continue that and somehow bankrupt Russia and, again, break it up into 5 parts. So they've made it existential for themselves. They've made it existential for Russia. And you go back to the Pentagon assessment that was public, that 50% chance that if we start bombing, and that's the West doing it, mainly the U.S., inside Russia, they would strike back with nukes. And then Putin clarifying, well, if we see a large launch, it could be a sneak attack with nukes, so we're going to have to go ahead and nuke you at that point. Please don't do that. So at least they limited, to 4 or 5 big cruise missile attacks a day, and then maybe 100 drones a day going into major cities and attacking their nuclear bases, their nuclear bomber bases. I mean, extreme provocation, testing the line, and not playing Russian roulette where you have a 6-shot revolver and you put 1 .357 Magnum casing in, round in, but this is 3 out of 6, and they're like, well, that's a safe bet. Let's roll the dice, spin the cylinder, and then click it to our head every day. It just goes the fundamental insanity that you see escalating. I mean, if you go back to
but actual insanity, not, I don't know, will tariffs work or something, whatever you could argue, but risking nuclear war? I mean, that's so fucking crazy that I can hardly believe it's real.
That's a good point. They say Trump saying our surrender to these one-sided trade deals, which is totally true, and deindustrialized us and destroyed our morale, and is a huge national security issue, that he's rolling the dice there. No, it would be rolling the dice
with nuclear war? Again, I think you should be in prison for even having that. That's like the craziest thing I can imagine.
Well, remember Biden just 2 years ago said we can't send F-16s and Abrams tanks because that escalates the threat ladder of the Rand Corporation. That's World War III, but they went ahead and did that. Then they went to the bombing inside. So the reason I went back to that, I'm glad you raised it, is the EU is refusing to end the war. We're trying to drag us into it fully. They're arresting their political opposition, Călin Georgescu in Romania. They're not letting him run in the new election.
He's an amazing man. I just talked to him.
Amazing.
Day before yesterday.
And then Marine Le Pen, that is super popular in the head presidential polls. So they have a judge find her guilty of nothing and take her off the ballot. You have the State Department under Biden admittedly working in Brazil with Lula to take Bolsonaro off the ballot because he's popular and then indict him. And they're talking about doing it in Hungary. They're talking about doing it in Poland. They said if AfD won, which they almost did, that the EU Commission might cancel that election. So the EU is really taken off the mast. And people that don't know, it was set up in 1956 as a steel deal, Treaty of Rome. And they got the nations over time to sign away their sovereignty to it. And,
I remember.
And an unelected commission with van der Leyen, up there running all of this. And she even came out, as you know, on Monday and said, well, Trump's blown up the international order. He's defeated the New World Order. And she said, okay, we're going to go ahead and agree, at least in principle, to what Trump is saying. And that's because the trade is completely one-sided. So again, Trump's move isn't just the perfect move. It's perfect in that it's the only moves we have left for us and for global stabilization. That's why anybody that cares about self-preservation for the whole planet should be fully behind Trump's policies that are very popular around the world and are seen as sane. And again, the world, this huge alliance of nations, wants to join that team. And the good news is Trump's polls are the highest ever. I know the American people are understanding that and getting that. The concern is...
It is kind of crazy that his number... I mean, I'm getting... because I live in a rich people world for part of the year. I know a lot of rich people, and boy, they're really upset. And I share their instinctive concern about any chaos. My parents got divorced. I hate chaos, right? Mm-hmm. So I get that. But from my perspective, I'll just admit it, like on my phone, it's like, I voted for Trump. What the hell's going on? And I get it. I'm not, criticizing anyone. But then his numbers go up.
Well, I'd like
to... It just shows you that you can, even I really make a big effort to like live in different places, know different people, not be a captive of my surroundings, not just live among rich people with like dumb rich people attitudes. Like really try to be bigger than that. And I always flatter myself that I succeed. But even I am like, I guess, kind of captive to that, because then I see the numbers and I'm like, people really like this. His numbers went up after the tariffs. That's correct, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, I'd like to talk to folks out there saying Trump is being a destabilizer. The globalist order was collapsing by their own corruption and mismanagement and their alliance with China being double-crossed. And so that old order was already being collapsed by them. And Trump's coming in very pragmatically with a good, fair, freedom-based, meritocracy, competition-based system. But to people that want to talk about destabilization, starting the war with Russia, total destabilization. Dissolving the borders and all the human smuggling and the fentanyl,
exactly.
Total destabilization. In engaging in all this overspending and the country basically being bankrupt if we don't grow our way out of it, total destabilization. And then wink, wink, the attempted assassinations of Trump. What do they think would have happened if Trump really would have gotten killed in Pennsylvania in July of last year or a few months later in Florida? If you look at the scenarios there, they run from bad to worse. So the real destabilization...
And bad for the people behind it. Like, clearly those assassinations were not lone gunmen. They were part of a much, much larger conspiracy, obviously. Everyone knows that. But those people behind those attempted murders would have been in bigger trouble had those murders succeeded, attempted murders succeeded, correct?
Absolutely. And if somebody's able to kill Trump now, people better hope he doesn't get struck by a bolt of lightning, because the bad guys will get the blame. And that's why so many people that have kind of been on the fence, the establishment, but we're working with the globalists just because that was the system, are enthusiastically joining Trump and Elon because they understand that this is the only game in town for people that aren't delusional. But you have that megalomania.
I think that's so true. Yeah.
You have that megalomania historically when elites have never lost before and are losing, that they just continue to accelerate and intensify it. And I know you've covered this. A lot of the people don't seem to know that in August of 2020, I mentioned it earlier, there was a big article in the New York Times with John Podesta covering a war game they just had, that if Trump was able to win, they were going to have blue states secede and blue cities secede and then create civil unrest and civil war conditions. And then when they knew Trump was going to win, because the poll numbers were so incredible, a few months before the last election last year, Raskin, Carville, Podesta, all of them said civil war conditions. We're going to need to have uprisings. Carville said that. Trump's coming to kill you. We got to rise up, Carville said, and others. And they are clearly escalating with the Tesla attacks and the swatting attacks and the calls for violence. The 55% of liberal Democrats in a study want Trump killed. They are embracing real terrorism, real domestic terrorism, and that's building towards what I believe is in the cards, because you see the Democrat pundits and their operatives everywhere before the election and after it in the last 78 days or so, saying once he got in office, Trump and Tom Homan are going to kill migrants. And when they do, there's going to be an uprising. And, well, Trump's not going to go mow down people at an illegal alien demonstration. You also have them saying Trump supporters are going to attack black people. Well, where would black people be alone in big numbers? A church, a university. Trump supporters are going to kill black people. And we know a lot of the globalist groups have been funding white supremacist groups and domestic terror groups and basically run them historically. So the last piece of all the pre-programming I've seen is that to have these uprisings, we're going to need something much bigger than George Floyd, much bigger than Jesse Smollett. And so I am predicting on the current trajectory of what they wargamed before and what they said, the final piece they need for this destabilization that they'll label a race-based civil war that will then crash the markets and be used kind of like the predictive programming in the movie that came out last year, Civil War, to have a bunch of states and the main military join them in a military operation to remove Trump, when the Trumpian figure in the movie is killed, and executed inside the Oval Office. And so that's their dream. That's their backup plan. And you have the two camps. One camp is kind of the Chucky Schumer, completely evil, but isn't particularly publicly pushing that, though he had his famous whirlwind, we're coming after you speech.
But he's an old man.
Absolutely. So you have the Soros wing with Alexander Soros that more and more is in charge and is really making a run at escalating domestic unrest and terrorism, leading into some triggering event, starting. Things are aligning for this summer. And I know that folks in the government that are patriots are aware of that, but I think that the spokespersons and others need to really get ahead of all this calls for violence and not just repudiate it, but talk about the Democrat leadership and their talking heads that are pushing it. I mean, we've seen Colbert just last week say, deep state, please, do something, stop Trump. And so that's where we are. So they want to expand war to try to take control of the agenda. They've been hyping a new virus being released to try to stop Trump's reboot of our economy, because they think that would stop this populist revolution. In Europe, it's arresting their political opposition and stopping elections. And they also have Europe trying to sue Elon Musk and billion-dollar fines, trying to shut him down, like we saw with Brazil. So those are the different strategies. They're also doing big put options and naked shorts, trying to crash the market, and then blaming Trump's tariffs on that. So it's economic terrorism, the buildup of domestic terrorism, the false flags that can be used, a nuclear false flag to get us into direct war with Russia, a new viral release. Those are the things they've got set up, ready to go, and that they've said before they would use to maintain control.
Everybody loves and appreciates first responders. When things go haywire, they're the ones who show up and make you safe, protect you, not just you, but the entire country. Most people agree they're heroes. But what happens if they can't show up? First responders cannot be everywhere all the time. And if there's an emergency, particularly a big emergency, there aren't enough to go around. So you have to be your own first responder. Before an ambulance arrives, before a doctor can help, it is up to you to protect yourself and your family. And if it's a medical emergency, you could be out of luck because you don't have the right medications. Most people do not have the medications they need at home. There's an answer to that. It's called the JACE case. It's a simple but smart solution to a problem most people don't even think about. It's a set of emergency prescriptive medications
curated by medical experts. You've got peace of mind, knowing that no matter what happens, you are totally prepared. Even if you're a prepared kind of person with stuff stored in your cellar, you probably don't have the right medications. What if there's an infection or any kind of crisis and you don't have access to first responders? You're going to want a JACE case, medications on hand when they matter most. Go to jace.com and use code Tucker at checkout for a discount. Jace, JASE.com, checkout code Tucker. The first thing in countries that descend into darkness that happens is speech is controlled. And there are political police who put people who speak out against the regime in jail. And that's happening in Brazil, as you know. It's happening in the UK. It's happening in Germany.
They're trying it in Canada.
It's definitely happening in Canada. And these were formerly free countries in Australia. And so the one place that it isn't going to happen right now is the United States because of the First Amendment. So how do you end First Amendment protections? Well, you pick off people like you, which they've been trying to do for over a decade. And, you know, I happen to be, as I've told you many times in private, I happen to be on a fishing trip when I worked at Fox the night that you were taken off the air. And I thought it was like one of the greatest threats to speech in the United States I'd ever seen. I wasn't there, and Fox News like prevented my fill-in host from defending you because Alex Jones is bad. Okay, that's when I realized they were in on it. But they need to end speech in the United States. They need to shut down X. They have to. And my guess is, and I hope I'm wrong, that there is like legitimate hate and extremism on social media. You know, to the point where it makes me uncomfortable. I'm thinking that maybe a lot of that is manufactured, actually. And that if there is a mass shooting, and God forbid, but if there is a mass shooting of the people who've been targeted for hate on actual hate, that's true, on social media, that will be used as a pretext to shut it down.
Absolutely. And
has this occurred to you?
Yes.
Because I see people on social media who I know for a fact, or I think I know, are being funded by the very people they're attacking. It's like, what? Including one of the biggest voices. Like, I know that that's true. And so, like, what is this? And it's clearly preparatory to some sort of event that will shut down, a violent event that will be used as a pretext to shut down free speech. Am I being paranoid?
No, that's where all the foundation's been laid. Actually, the superstructure has been built.
Yeah.
They're just putting the finishing touches on it. And so, in a way, it's fortuitous that I'm here today, because you were here, I was talking to my lawyer right before we started taping. We got some really big news that in Connecticut, the Supreme Court said we're not even hearing your appeal now because it was so strong. The kangaroo show trial that I went through there a few years ago, where the judge had already found me guilty. Wouldn't let
guilty of what? Of having an unauthorized opinion, of being mean or whatever? Those are all legal under the U.S. Constitution. Like, you cannot be punished for giving your opinion. I don't care how ugly other people think it is. And you've contested whether you even gave that opinion, but it doesn't matter. Under our system, you're allowed to say what you think, period.
Well, you're right, especially...
That's what the Bill of Rights is.
And we have the Supreme Court rulings with the New York Times Sullivan.
Insane.
And
Brandenburg versus Ohio. You have a right to your opinion.
And what they did was, with all these PR firms and massive thousands of articles, sometimes a month, and hundreds of TV programs a year, they built a straw man once I was censored off the internet the last 7 years. Still on my website, Infowars.com, still on some talk radio, but it was the verboten thing. People had to go, get underground. They could then build a straw man of things I had supposedly done I never did. And then when I wasn't defended, other than people like you, it set the precedent to then come after everybody else, including President Trump, when he was taking off everything on January 6th. So people couldn't hear him saying be peaceful before, during,
I defended black nationalists who hate whites. Obviously don't agree with them. I am white. So are my kids. Like, I reject their program. But they were indicted for giving their opinions. And, like, we cannot allow that. And now the ACLU is just completely captured. It's like a training organization, nothing to do with free speech. Like, where are the people who will stand up for the foundational right that separates a free man from a slave, which is the right to say what you think? And why were they also, may they bask in shame for not defending you? I mean that. Well,
I have a major update. It's in the last 7 years of them suing me and this whole saga, we now have basically all the pieces of exactly what happened. I told you some about it last night. It would take a few minutes, but I could just give people a basic summation of what's happened.
Yeah, please.
But first, just an example of free speech. In Texas, there's famous cases where they take people's small children because the school secretly convinces them with grant money, they get paid for it, public and private, that a little boy's really a girl, a little girl's really a boy. Then the parents find out the school's been putting them in a database, giving them a social worker, sending them to special school times with peer pressure of other kids that have been put in the cult for sterilization, transhumanism. And then they take the person's child, saying it's abuse, when you argue, my son is really a boy, not a girl. Well, now Colorado in the House, as you know, just passed the bill. It's in the Senate, and they allowed no debate, saying that if a parent finds out their kid is being brainwashed and says, no, my son is a boy, my girl's a girl, that is abuse, and they're going to officially take your child. Other states have passed laws like Oregon and Washington. So you talk about free speech. This is beyond that. This is parental rights. This is everything. Now say parents can't argue and say to the state that has determined that your child's another sex. And then in places like New Jersey and other states, the hospital systems now have on the form when your child's born dozens of things, transgender, all these other names, gender queer, all these things where the parents pick at birth what the baby's going to be and say this. So if the state wants to come and say they're another sex, that's okay. If parents don't like it, their kid gets taken in these areas. That's where this is going. It's already happening. But if the parents want to opt in, they can decide for their child. So as long as you decide that we're going to chemically and then medically sterilize surgically this poor little person that's being put into this death cult, then it's okay. The only thing you're not allowed to say is no. I say no to this designation. So that's where Alex Jones having his speech massively attacked goes. So it's a long story, but here's the summation. I didn't understand, even though I know a lot of things about politics in the world, I didn't understand how PR firms work, how law firms work, how the deep state was operating. And they later admitted, even on MSNBC, that a few years ago, oh, we've been successful with Alex Jones. Next, we're going to do it with people like Tucker Carlson. And they mentioned you. So Hillary knows she's in trouble. 2 months before the election, 2016, she does a $20+ million ad buy talking about me and twisting what I had said about that event in Connecticut, that mass shooting. And then the ad, she says, Alex Jones is Trump's brain. This is the guy that Trump says is an amazing person. We'll be talking a lot. You're a great guy. And they show that clip of Trump on my show saying that. So they created a demonized version of me to attack Trump. Then that made me this huge demon with the left even more. Then for 2 years, articles every day, sometimes dozens a day, TV shows, programs, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, every channel, foreign news, Tokyo news, Russian news. It was being pushed over. Alex Jones is bullying kids, parents of dead kids. Alex Jones is sending people to pee on graves. None of that ever even happened, much less me. And then they sue me, and then they want all this discovery, and they say, who do you work for? Who's telling you what to do in the Republicans in all these depositions? Of course, it wasn't there. So they hold me in default for saying I didn't give them my secret plan to get rich off these people that I barely ever even talked about. They put 22 minutes of evidence in the Texas show trial where I was found guilty by the judge and the Connecticut show trial that were only a month apart in 2022 in the fall. So I go in, HBO's producing it, cameras, putting makeup on the judges. I'm given 20+ things I can't talk about. My lawyers are sanctioned if they try to raise that. Well, where did Alex Jones say this? Where did he do this? No evidence could be showed to counter them. They could just say whatever they wanted to. And then they have a $1.5 billion judgment in Connecticut. They have a $50 million judgment total, or $49 million in Texas, because I'm already found guilty. Then the judge tells them to say how guilty I am. They lie and totally exaggerate all the money I have, say I got it from these people with no evidence. And so I knew I was being railroaded for my speech. They said in the Connecticut trial and in the Texas show trial and on the courthouse steps, we don't want money from Mr. Jones. We want to shut him down. They said that in court filings. So I go into bankruptcy because I'm out of money personally, never had all this money, they said, not even a fraction of it. And so for 3 years, I'm in bankruptcy. And they keep going and say, we don't want money, we want him closed. The judge keeps saying, no, you have to actually, do a settlement with him, or we have to sell InfoWars.
This is all because you said something that other people said they were offended by?
Yes, but
how can you, I don't understand in a free country how other people being offended by what you say can have you destroyed by the state.
Well, it's more than that. They said I sent people to their houses. I peed on graves. all this stuff that nobody did.
Why weren't you arrested? You can't pee on a grave. Why weren't you arrested
for Connecticut?
Why weren't you arrested for peeing on the grave?
Out of the people that sued me, I only said the name of one of the people ever.
If you commit a crime, you should be criminally charged for it, and the state has to prove that you did it, at which point you're convicted and punished. If the state accuses you of something but doesn't charge you with it, they're fucking liars. Like, by definition, they don't, that's not on the list of options, that they can just discredit you, attack your character, destroy you. No. The state has one option. If you committed a crime, they charge you with the crime and they prove you did the crime. It's that simple.
That's right. And I never got investigated for stalking or anything because I did nothing.
For any crime.
So here's where it gets crazy. Here's what we've learned since they had the show trials.
I noticed none of the libertarians defended you either. Where was the Reason Foundation and Cato and all these supposedly freedom-minded nonprofits who were just freaking liars? Like, none of them defended you that I know of.
Bare minimum, they were bought off or they wanted to keep their head down. So here's what we learned. The Democratic Party and the Justice Department, the FBI and the CIA, this has come out in court, come out in documents now. We've got it all. I published it at InfoWars. They can be shut down literally in days now. We're finally up to the wire today with this big ruling. But it's the truth's out there, but they don't want you to know it. So they come after me to demonize Trump. Then they run ads on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere for the 2 years before they sue me, 2017, 2018, saying I'm attacking him, saying I'm coming after him, using my name to raise money. Okay, it turns out hundreds of millions using my name. This has come out. Saying I'm victimizing him and then never showing what I supposedly did. Just, this man's hurting us, help us, help us. Then I was already taken off the internet after that for other reasons that they cooked up. They had Lester Holt get up on TV and say, Alex Jones called for people to get battle rifles and go attack Democrats. No, I talked about them, Antifa attacking your house and how they were planning to attack more people's houses. And I said, none of us are going to be violent. But I said, everybody needs to have their battle rifle ready or their shotgun in their home if the left comes to kill you.
Well, as someone whose house was attacked by Antifa, I agree completely.
But then Holt never showed what I supposedly said.
Right.
He just said straight up. Okay, so I wasn't even taken off the internet for Sandy Hook because I wasn't even known for that. Okay, barely ever talked about it. Then they sue me. Then they run more PR. Then they raise more money off of me. And then when they didn't find anything in their all their discovery, because there was nothing that I did, then they have the judges both find me in default, coordinate for both trials to be held in a month and a half period in late 2022. And then right after they win, the jury's fined for all this money, they come back and they say, that's not enough, Your Honor. We want 2.75 trillion. That's the GDP of India. People don't believe that. Just type in Alex Jones, Sandy Hook, 2.75 trillion. And so the judge said, no, you just get 1.5 billion.
In retrospect, did you ever think when they awarded a judgment against you equivalent to the GDP of India, did you ever think, like, maybe I should keep my visions to myself and not, like, next time I see 9/11 coming, I just shouldn't say anything because people who predict the future accurately are always punished for it?
I think that's, I mean, yeah, I mean, well, what I realized was I've got something important to say, so I better say it even louder because the evil wants this shut down. But
Clearly.
Just to finish the key part, I'm telling
Sorry.
No.
It's making me upset hearing this.
No. I'm saying I haven't gotten to the big stuff. I'm just giving people the background.
This is not the country I grew up in at all. Just saying that. Sorry.
Well, no, you're right. Thank you for the platform. No, thank you, Tucker. And I told you all this last night. It took 30 minutes. Let me just try to condense it. So I know they're trying to demonize me to get at Trump. I know they're trying to set the precedent to shut down everybody else. And once I'm demonized, they think nobody will defend me, and that sets the precedent. They admitted all that. Then when they win the show trial, it was already fixed. These PR firms come out in New York and Connecticut and go, we've been doing this for years. We exposed Jones. We did this. We helped get this big win, blah, blah, blah. Then this undercover video comes out that is in a predator sexting trolling operation in D.C., which the guy was never implicated in, but that's how he got caught up with the trolling operation. This Oblevis person, CIA and FBI, it's confirmed, says, well, we investigated Alex Jones for years at the FBI. Then he went on to the CIA. That's where he's currently. And he said, we couldn't find anything criminal on him. So we went to the Sandy Hook people with law firms and we developed this plan with this narrative to take him down. And now we're in the process of shutting him down. And the person says, well, are you still trying to put him in prison? No, we've just destroyed his name and destroyed who he is. You know, it's all on video. It's online. Just type in FBI, CIA agent, admits to running Sandy Hook frame job of Alex Jones.
We recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is Enjoy an Alp. Just to kind of refresh our baseline assumptions here, is the CIA allowed to destroy people in the United States for criticizing?
No, it's illegal.
Oh, it's illegal. Okay.
Of course, begging the question, but absolutely. So then we have that. But then I go, wait a minute. At the trial last year, they have this FBI agent who was the chief counsel, who on the stand, they say it to hide it in plain view. The Democrat Party law firm talked to him for like a day. And he goes, so you went and got the suit against Mr. Jones? Yes, I went to your law firm, Mr. Koskoff, and I went to the families, and I organized them to do this. So they're hiding in plain view the chief counsel of Connecticut that I didn't even pick up on at the time. Why is he on the stand? I'm sitting there talking about how he went and set this up and did this to me. And then later we have Oblebas talking about years ago, we criminally investigated him for a decade. We couldn't find anything. So we went and did this civilly. So now that's two of them admitting it on the stand and undercover video. Now this is where it gets wild. Then 3 days after Trump's in office, we done a FOIA request 2 years ago for my FBI file. We done it many times. They never responded back. As soon as Trump gets in, they send us a disc in the mail. I get a call from the FBI saying, hey, be sure you watch your mail. And they send me a disc of our FOIA, and it was 196 files, but it was just the cover sheets. It said the rest is national security, but it said, Alex Jones, top national security threat. Obama administration ordered me to be a level 3 terror national security threat in 2013. I had Carl Serafin on, who knows how to read the code documents on the dozens of pages I got that were attached. He said probably to thousands, but 196 other investigation packets. And we're talking weekly and monthly meetings out of the Boston field office. And Trump didn't learn about this his first admin. So we learned this was going on until I was sent this by the new FBI director, okay, or the new FBI. And it's just the cover sheets, but they have codes on it that Kyle Serafin used to run counterterrorism in the FBI, huge whistleblower, came on my show for hours and documented what it meant. Then he talked to his sources currently in D.C., and they said, yeah, we're actually on this. It's bad. Okay. So Obama illegally had me declared a national security threat, open criminal espionage investigation with huge resources. HUMET, attempted infiltration, that's all the codes. And that's now makes sense. People we hire trying to set us up, trying to get us to commit crimes. All this stuff over the years, hacking into our surveillance camera systems, trying to find something dirty, all sorts of sabotage. So now, I'm living in a spy movie. So we get that like 10 days in the Trump administration. 3 days in, they mail it. It comes to the mail like 7 days later. So now we have that. So we have Oblebas admitting it from the FBI and CIA. We have the other lead counsel in Connecticut admitting it on the stand, proud of it, hiding in plain view, just because they knew it would come out. Then we get another FBI contact. They say, why don't you go look at the Federal Register and look for money going to these Sandy Hook foundations of the people that sued me? We go look, it's $4 million plus in payments to them right after they sue me, and then 2 payments to them during when both trials started. So
and
one
payments from whom?
From the Justice Department.
So tax dollars?
Tax dollars, over $4 million from the Justice Department were paid to the main Sandy Hook foundation that is on the board, at the head of it, for the people suing me that ran it.
This is crazy.
So now we have the Justice Department, and I'm releasing those documents. I was actually planning to release them today, a week ago, before you invited me out here. So that's all going to be out today. The documents, all of it, but it's online. They don't hide it. Also, millions and millions and millions more of COVID money went to them. And you know what happened to Cori Bush's husband. I'm not saying it's illegal. It should be looked into. So this is why this is important. This is the most open and shut, start to finish operation we've ever seen, with all this money directly from the Justice Department, with the Justice Department admitting they initiated it undercover tapes with the CIA. Then you have the FBI admitting on the stand that they initiated it. Then you have the money directly from the Justice Department to them directly when they're attacking me. And then it gets worse. In the last year in my bankruptcy, before that, they attached a U.S. trustee, which they can do under federal law, to my bankruptcy, like I'm Enron. Most people don't have this happen. So there's Justice Department lawyers and agents at my depositions giving me U.S. code to read before the deposition, after I'm sworn in, that if I say anything incorrect, they're going to charge me with felonies. Okay? But I still don't take the fifth. I've done nothing wrong, and I have accountants, and it's all lies. They're alleging I've stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from these people. None of that's true. I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. Never had $10 million of extra laying around.
What, you stole money from what people?
They just say, I harassed them. I made money off them. It's their money. It's just all made up. But I have the Justice Department there. So then the Justice Department has the U.S. trustee in May of last year order a private security company on a Friday evening to show up with guns on their sides and say, everybody out of the building. And I say, where's the court order? And I say, call the head of your security company. I get on the phone. He goes, hey, I'm telling the people this too. We got to have a court order. I'm going to tell them.
They showed up at your office?
They showed up at my office.
With guns?
Armed security, yes.
Yeah.
And so I call my lawyers. They don't even believe it's happening. We get a hearing, and the judge blocks it. Then he has a full evidentiary hearing June 14th. Fires the U.S. trustee, removes them, removes the CRO that did it, okay, in the bankruptcy, and then appoints a new one who comes in to be all buddy-buddy. Then he says, okay, we want to sell it. And then that way proceeds have sold InfoWars. But then we have buyers that are good that'll keep it going. The Sandy Hook families, really Democratic Party, says we don't want money in court filings. We want it shut down. The judge says, no, you will sell it at an auction, but cash auction. Then they have a auction date set. The day before, they say that's canceled. It'll be private bids turned in on that Monday. And then the next day, we will tell you who the winner is. Well, then it was the Bloomberg financing, his Everytown group, The Onion. Everybody heard The Onion had gotten InfoWars. Remember that? Back in November. So all that happened. So we countersue. The judge has hearings on December 9th and 10th, says there was never an auction. It was fraudulent. You guys need to settle this, and you need to get money for Mr. Jones's buyers, and it needs to stop. They come back to the judge 3 times and say, we don't want money. We don't ever want it sold. We want it shut down. So the judge said about a month ago, he said, okay, I'm done. This has gone on 3 years. Take it to state court. The state court is Judge Bellis that did the show trial with HBO. That's Judge Ware Gamble in Texas. It's Judge, that's the other judge in Connecticut. So it's Judge Ware Gamble, just like Judge Bellis running the show trial, finding me guilty. She has said as soon as she gets that, she's going to send in the constables from the county and just close the doors, lock it. Because they don't want the money they can produce. They don't want any of that. They want it shut down.
Can I just ask you a reality-based question here? So all of this stems...
Sorry, this is a long story.
No. It's a shocking story, but I just don't want to lose the baseline.
And it's never been told in full.
The baseline facts. Okay, so all of this stems from a school shooting in Connecticut.
12 years ago.
12 years ago. And you suggested on air that there was something weird about this.
I covered other people saying that.
Correct. You did not commit the school shooting.
No. Adam Lanza did.
Adam Lanza did.
And I said for years, I believe it happened before they sued me.
Right. So we spent approximately zero time and zero money as a country trying to figure out why would Adam Lanza murder all these children? We're all against murdering children. Some of us are against murdering all children, including in foreign countries and here in abortion clinics, are just against murdering kids. Okay, so I'm not going to cede the moral high ground on kids to ghouls like this. So, okay, but we have no idea why Adam Lanza did this. No one's trying to find out. You instead are being blamed, who are the father of 4 kids, for the murder of all these kids when you had literally nothing to do with the murder at all. And the actual murderer is probably brain fried and SSRIs or whatever the cause. Like, no one cares.
Well, that's right. He was on SSRIs, like almost all of them. And exactly. And here's the finale.
But like, no one cares. It's like all these people jump up and down, including some of these parents, I assume. And like, I understand they're upset their kids are murdered. I mean, I have true compassion for them, but they're blaming you for it.
And then raising money, hundreds of millions off my name. And his mother bought the gun legally. And then Remington was bankrupted by it and paid $73 million to them. Remember that? It just goes on and on. And after they sued me, this one foundation's increase went up while they were suing me and during the show trials, 375%. Let me give you the actual numbers. 337% to 119 million just during that period. And their main fundraiser was me, not to mention all the Justice Department, 4+ million they got. But here's
blaming you when you say the fundraiser was you. They were blaming you for a mass murder that you were horrified by and didn't commit, and ignoring the actual mass murderer, blaming everyone but the murderer for political reasons. So like they would just say,
It's like that meme where Indiana Jones moves the idol and puts the bag of sand on there. They removed Lanza and just put me on there. And it was, he's coming. He's harassing us. He made all this money off of us. He's bullying. He's sending the stalkers. He's attacking. Help, help, help. With just ads everywhere. Help, help, help us find Alex Jones. Help, help, help. And I hadn't talked about him in years and years, only talked about one of their names. I never even knew who this FBI agent was. None of my crew said his name. My lawyer got up and said, Alex Jones ever said your name? No. Any of his crew ever said your name? No. You ever post your picture, ever talk about you? No. When's the first time you heard about Alex Jones? 2016. And then he goes and does all this. But here's the finale. Here's the finale. This is what I know when you talk to Trump and others, this is important because this needs to be looked at. This is conspiracy against rights. We're getting ready to take action on this legally. This is violation of process. This is racketeering. I mean, cut and dry in my view. And that's what my legal experts agree as well. It's cut and dry. Turns out Paul Weiss, the big law firm that lost its intelligence agency clearances because they targeted Trump and they admitted to it, they came to Trump a month ago and they said, give us back 50+% of our business. Let us have our national security clearance. We promise to stop doing lawfare against you and your supporters. And this is an agreement. And we'll spend $40 million on pro bono work that's non-political. It's in the agreement, okay? And that's, by the way, in our legal actions about to come out. They just filed that 40 million of that 20 is their suit of me. And they list the lawyers.
That's their pro bono work?
And they've been coordinating the entire bankruptcy assault. They came up with the fake auction on record. That's come out in our depositions of them. We're suing them currently, but more's coming. They came up with the plan with the U.S. trustees multiple times to have fake auctions, and the judge said it was a fake auction. They're the ones that sent armed security in on Friday evening. I was leaving at like 7 o'clock. There's all these guys showing up from the security company we'd already used for 8 years, but all these guys never seen. They're like, hey, man, we're told they're closing the doors. They're kicking you out for good tonight at 9. And we shouldn't have told you this, but I knew one of the guys. But now it's under the court. And then I get on the phone with the head of the security company, and he goes, listen, man, he goes, I got this lady saying I'm a Justice Department official, Melissa Hazelton, and her lawyer, Freeman, Melissa Hazelton and Liz Freeman, and they're telling me we are Justice Department officials. You must close it. He said, no, I want a court order. So then I had to sleep up there because they tried to hire another security company the next day, and I knew it. And I want
to steal your office from you.
Listen, when they did the fake auction the next day, they came and turned the internet off because they knew I was going to appeal it, and the judge shut that down too. And I was out of there for a few days, so there was such an outcry. The judge ordered to let us back in the building. We've been kicked out repeatedly. Once I wouldn't leave.
Of your own building.
Of our own building. But Paul Weiss has been running this whole thing with Koskoff and Koskoff. It's basically a total deep state operation with Senator Blumenthal and his son. Okay, so this is on record, So here they are telling Trump, oh, yes, we'll stop doing lawfare against you and your people. And then now they're billing that in the basic fine they agreed to with Trump. That's what it is, unofficial fine. They are telling Trump, we're going to stop our attacks on your supporters and you. And now they think Trump, they know he's busy, that he won't learn that they've done this. So in my view, they need serious sanctions from the White House. This isn't about me, I'm tough. This is about this saga. Everything I've told you is even worse than I'm telling you. The insanity of what they've done and the persecution would take days because they had 4 court ordered that my company had to pay for. And then if the money didn't come in, we wouldn't make it through those investigations. So I'd tell listeners, hey, buy our products. We've got to pay to be investigated. 4 different investigations, forensic accountants looking for dirt. They had the IRS audit me for a year. We got a $4.3 million tax return back. The IRS says we never do this. It went into the bankruptcy because I'd overpaid $4.3 million in 5 years because I tell my CPAs, overpay. I know because I don't have a target. So there are 3 years of investigation. I got a $4.3 million check back. And none of it was true. And then even the New York Times last year had to say, well, it turns out Jones had meager resources and never really had anything. Well, it was all lies. So it was all lies I did anything to him. It was all lies I made money off of. It was all lies I had all this money. And the point is now last night, the Connecticut Supreme Court said, we're not even going to hear your appeal, and which is ironclad, abuse of process, all the rest of it. Texas, the judge violated 3 laws, cut and dry. The cap is at $5 million. She said, I don't care about the Texas cap. I'm doing 45. And the change was 49. They just don't care. And it's the same in all of this lawfare. Just like a judge found
Trump. You never did anything. You never broke any laws. They would have indicted you. Like, this is all so hallucinogenic. It's so crazy.
Well, imagine it's like I'm their chew toy, and they just chew on me.
But your crime, look, I just want to refer you to the very first moments of this conversation when I pointed out once again for the 100th time, you called 9/11 in detail before 9/11. So that is like, just from my perspective as an outsider and someone who knows you, that's like the defining fact of your life. That's the first sentence of your obituary. No one did that, only you. That fact, I think, is responsible for everything that has come after.
Well, just exactly. Well, just think of the scandal. On record, Kyle Seraphin, and he showed me the conversations with high-level FBI that said they're investigating it. He's going to come back on the show, I think, tomorrow or Friday. Famous whistleblower. He read the documents, and we got a lot from it, but he explained, I mean, this is like terrorist designation. This is espionage. So I've had a full espionage, counter-espionage operation against me, trying to find something for 10 years.
So where's the DOJ? This is a test for the new Department of Justice, brought in on the explicit promise to end the corruption, stop using our justice system, which my ancestors helped build and yours too, as a political army mobilized against domestic political opponents. That's not allowed. That's like Haiti stuff. We don't do that. It's not a Tantan Makut. It's the FBI. They promised to do that. So can they help you? Are they helping you?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. Trump, cut and dry, had the same stuff done to him. He's the only person on a wider scale that has had this. And you'll hear him say, it's unbelievable. It will take a long time. It's unbelievable. I've studied the cases, so have you. It's the same kind of crap. A judge in New York finds him guilty, doesn't give him a jury trial. I mean, it goes on and on. So what they've done to me, they want to do to you. But if you want that string that pulls the whole sweater apart, they think because of the demonization and what they said I did to kids I didn't do, that the Republicans will be scared to ever defend me.
Oh, that's for sure.
When in truth, it's like the Mendez brothers. When people found out what they went through, they learned that they'd all been lied to about that. Well, this is like that. This is like what the story you've heard, folks, from start to finish isn't that. They saw I was famous. They saw I was big. They tied me to Trump to try to hurt him. Then they raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars off of me, got Justice Department money, had show trials, put out all this stuff I didn't do on record, and then now are not just trying to kill the Second Amendment using these poor dead children who, God rest their souls, but the First Amendment as well. So this is outrageous, and it's a bellwether showing that Paul Weiss, that big Democrat law firm, one of the top ones, would literally tell Trump, okay, we'll stop doing political persecution. We admit to it. They confessed to lawfare against him and his supporters, his family. And then they're still doing it to me, and they're billing the money they said that he'd pay in me. So it's a sick joke. They think Trump won't learn about this. And at the end of the day, I just want it to stop. And look, we've survived so much. People say, oh, they were going to shut you down here. They were shutting you down there. It's in the news. They kicked us out of the building in November. It's in the news. They kicked us out tried to kick us out in May of last year. There was a bunch of other stuff that happened. My big deal is I'm not going to give up because they've said we want to get the name InfoWars. We want to confuse it and have chupacabras and Bigfoot, and we're going to act like we're Alex Jones. They claim they own my X account. Musk had to sue, get involved, and have them back off of that. The Democrats in their filing in bankruptcy 6 months ago said that the amendment against slavery, what is it, 13 or 14? 13, doesn't apply to me. That's, you read it in Bloomberg from the filing. They said he is a special type of person. And so just like Prince signed away his rights to a record company for his name and his music, I never signed away my rights. So they're saying they own the name Alex Jones. In the court filing, they say they own the name real Alex Jones. They're saying they own all my catalog of material, even though it's always been free to air and it's my political views and it's open. They can't do that. I can write a book and publish it to the world and say it's free. Somebody can't sue me and get a bankruptcy later and say they own a book I gave away copyright free. My show is owned by the world. But what is it they don't want? It's because my older shows, going back 30 years, are ultra green. They're not evergreen where they stay the test of time. They get more important. And so the system knows that those clips are getting hundreds of millions of views, some of them, where I lay out and predict hundreds of subjects and what's going to happen. And then I explain, though.
So that intellectual property is at stake.
They are preposterously, this is new law. they think off of demonized Alex Jones, they say this, they can set a precedent to not just censor you, not just take Tucker Carlson off the air, and they said you're the next target, literally. I'm saying the clips, you didn't see them, on CNN and MSNBC, that they will then take your identity, which under the prohibition of slavery and under the prohibition against slavery in the Texas Constitution and all the others, you can't take someone's name, you can't even take someone's tools under state law in Texas. But no, they are saying that they own the name Alex Jones.
And they own your archive of content.
Yes, and they say that they want to twist it and make fun of it. They had the Onion owner with the Everytown Bloomberg representative on this. They make Bloomberg pay for
the
it.
new Onion owner is just an intel cutout. I mean,
absolutely, from MSNBC.
I'm very aware. Yes,
a censorship operator. That was his
job.
Yeah,
and who has literally no sense of humor at all. He's the most humorless drone working on behalf of entrenched power, like in the United States, and he's running the comedy site. It's like the Babylon Bee. It's also fake.
And he's the MSNBC version of Brian Stelter.
Oh, I'm aware.
Oh, I know you're exactly. So what I'm saying is it's a constellation of operatives, corporate, media, government, Justice Department, the trustees, all of them. And they just like an army believe they're still going to beat America.
Oh, I know.
And they see me as a populist firebrand folk hero. And they said that themselves, and they want to silence and destroy that person so they can then take the identity of that and turn me into Satan. So,
meanwhile, Adam Lanza, the guy who murdered all those children, is totally forgotten.
Yeah, and I almost apologize. I don't really talk about this a lot on my own show. It's just come to a head today, and I'm very honored you let me run on and on. But, I mean, folks, this is your country, your world. This was done. What I've told you is 10% of it, okay? I mean, this is an incredible scandal. The law firm that confessed to Trump to try to destroy him illegally with lawfare and said, don't worry, sir, we'll do $40 million of good work, non-political. Half of that in a filing last week is me. They have gone and filed that half of our $40 million is what we've done to Alex Jones. I mean, come on. I mean, look, I don't care what happens to me. I just hope Trump takes away their national security clearance because they're not going to stop what they're doing, and those other law firms know exactly who they are.
I agree. And you'd love to talk to the person who negotiated that deal and see if he's aware of it.
Oh, I wonder who that is in the White House.
Yeah.
Maybe they should be looked at a little bit.
Yeah. So,
wonder what they got.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm just speculating here. That's why we need to investigate because, I mean, you know this in racketeering laws they passed. If the mafia says, oh, you better hire my cousin and pay me 10% or something might happen to your grocery store, and then they burn your grocery store down, they start investigating, they learn how the criminal networks operate. The mob boss doesn't say go burn it down. He just says, yeah, that guy's not paying. And they all want to mount my head on the wall. Like you've got, that great deer mounted on the wall over there. They want Alex Jones's head on the wall as a symbol to scare everybody else. I mean, they said that in the courthouses and on the courthouse steps. They said, send a message to everybody else, these patient zero. Yeah. We're going to take him off the air
and obey,
and destroy him. And we're going to scare every one of these other Americans to keep, I mean, literally, it's like in Bug's Life when the head grasshopper says, yeah, we got all this grain. Why are we going to go beat up the ants? Because one little ant stood up. And he goes, yeah, one little grain doesn't hurt. But he goes, but if they all stand up, and he pulls it and it floods them. He goes, if those little puny ants outnumber us 100 to 1, and if they ever figure that out, it's over for us. That's why we're going back to kill that ant.
That's exactly right.
That's it. So I'm just the ant in Bug's Life.
You are, but it hasn't worked. And so I want to make a prediction because I just want to be on tape saying this. I'll say it again even more clearly this time. And of course, I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I do think a lot of the really crazy, bitter, ethnic hate that you see on social media is fake. It's people are saying it don't mean it. I think it's like, the Klansmen you'd see marching and you're like, there are no Klansmen. And you're like, what? And of course you find out that it's fake. And it's designed to convince people that there's like a lot of roiling ethnic hatred that doesn't really exist. And that's a predicate.
Yeah, Patriot Front.
Exactly. It's Charlottesville. But that's happening online right now. And I know that it is. And I think that at some point, I pray I'm wrong, but there's going to be an act of violence, ethnic-inspired violence, of hate-inspired violence, actual hate, like killing people. And I really hope I'm wrong, but I feel like this is real. And that event will be used to shut down free speech on social media. Because that is the threat. And you saw it with TikTok, like, oh, we need to ban TikTok because China owns it. No, nothing to do with China. It had everything to do with opinions that the people in charge didn't like being expressed there. And it's like, we're just going to, and the Congress went along with it. But if there's an act of violence and innocents are murdered, and I pray that doesn't happen because I hate that above all, but it has happened and I feel like it could happen again. And people say, and a lot of good people will go along with it, just like they went along with the censorship of you and the destruction of your life because they were told like he's bad. He had something to do with murdering children. And then people just shut down. They're like, I don't know. Alex Jones is associated with murdering children. So whatever they do to Alex Jones, like, is fine.
And I can't tell you how many times in front of my family, people walk up and they go, you killed those kids.
Exactly.
And I'll always go, really? I did, huh? And why am I walking around? And then just like, well, you know what you did. But what you said is so important. The last ingredients is the false flag on a big illegal alien demonstration or a black church. Because the Democrats keep saying, Trump's coming to kill the migrants. We got to rise up.
Yeah, or something else like that. But where innocents are murdered by a crazy person, or maybe an actual crazy person used, or whatever, or maybe it just happens organically. Maybe if you stoke enough ethnic division online, it's clearly bad. I mean, there are people who have, views that are, are mad at other ethnicities. I mean, that's real, okay? But there are also big actors who are not real. They're doing it on purpose.
And we know who they are. I mean,
yes, we do know who they are.
And for strategic reasons.
I don't want to get involved in all that filth, but
let's just say we've seen the documents separately.
100%. And they're stoking this stuff, and maybe it just organically inspires someone to commit murder, a mass murder. And again, I just pray, as someone who hates all violence, to say it again, I pray that's not the case. But
let's just say this. The people they're mainly attacking are the ones financing them. It's the oldest trick in the book, Hegelian dialectic. And so just be aware of that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and I just don't, And I think and the only reason I bring that up is because I worry about it every day.
I do too, because that's the next big move.
Free speech is the foundation of a free society. Without it, it's not a free society. You're a slave. If you can't say what you think, you're a slave. It's really simple. And we don't have slavery in this country. It's a free country.
And when it happens, I pray it doesn't. That's the next move. So we're predicting this so that there's enough eyes and ears on it and enough people watching so they don't pull it off. Because that's the thing. Everything I used to predict basically came true because the globalists were still in power. They're so disorganized, have so many problems now. A lot of times when we're able to get out ahead of things, you and others and Trump and Joe Rogan, we're able, and Elon's with a huge voice, second only to Trump, we're able to disrupt what they're doing and enough people see through it. So if it does happen, they try to stampede us into blaming whoever it is. Oh, the Crooks guy, he acted alone. Well, this will be some right-wing Trump supporter with a MAGA hat.
100%.
That'll get killed by the SWAT team.
He was inspired by hate online. Therefore, you're not allowed to have legitimate opinions or your own opinions. And, God can decide whether they're legitimate or not. But if you're a free man, a free person, you have a right to say what you really believe, period. And that cannot be encumbered or else you're a slave.
Absolutely. And we get back to the spiritual battle here. I just want people to know that my lawyers just told me, I put you on speaker with them. They said I could be shut down within 2 days, 2 weeks. They are coming to shut down InfoWars. We've survived so much, like a long boxing match. People are like, oh, yeah, right. No, this is very, very real. This has been very, very serious. And so, for now, people can find me on X at Real Alex Jones. But that part doesn't matter. People understand more and more how things work. All of your voices are so important. All of you sharing this interview, sharing the other great work Tucker's doing, all the courage he has and others have to really put it all on the line. We haven't even talked about Iran.
Well, give me your 5 minute. I mean, that I should say, I think this interview is going up tonight. We're going to try to get it up in a few hours, but that's such a dynamic situation. Steve Witkoff apparently is meeting directly with the Iranians, which I think is such a great, that's a blessing. But, and I hope for the best, but give us your 5 minute overview. Like, what is that and where's that going?
Well, Iran's plan B for the globalist. And Iran's got its issues and its Shiite militias and all that. I'm not lionizing the mullahs.
Oh, you're not?
But they've been isolated. Israel has knocked out their proxy forces in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank. And Netanyahu is extremely unpopular. He's been indicted. And he said he doesn't want an investigation in January. He doesn't want an investigation of October 7th until the war is over. But then he never, is going to have the war be over. So I'm not even against Netanyahu. I'm not against Israel. I know most people in Israel don't war with Iran either. But he's been trying to drag us into war since 9/11. That's how long he's been around and in power off and on into this. And they have the most ballistic missiles in the world. 4-1, 5-1, 6-1 to even the Israeli anti-missile defense system Israel, as you know, only has 3 big cities. They will get blown off the map by this. Conventionally, even if Iran doesn't have nukes and uses them, and the word is they do, Israel will nuke Iran, and then all hell's going to break loose. And in most scenarios, India and Pakistan start nuking each other. Saudi Arabia's got nukes. There's a lot of other countries that have nukes that people don't know about. You don't want even a limited nuclear war, because in most big threat assessment war games, and Tucker's an expert on this, he can attest to it, he talks to the experts, it breaks out. Kind of like your neighbor, has the Black Plague. Well, you might get it. Or your neighbor, has got syphilis, and God forbid you have sex with them. I mean, this is a lot worse than syphilis. This is a lot worse than TB. This is really dangerous. And Iran does have proxy forces in Europe and the United States that Biden let get in. And they really do have some of these sleeper cells that are here, that if this does go to full war, they can cause some major problems. And different foreign intelligence agencies are famous for spoofing Iranians and Saudi Arabian terror attacks. They could easily stage a big false flag to get us into a war with Iran.
I'm aware, yeah.
And they're also, the Russians have warned, and before they did, I warned, of attacks on nuclear power plants in Ukraine and Russia, try to blame Russia. Ukraine's done that, been caught. Ukraine and NATO tried to blame Russia for the Nord Stream pipeline. How laughable is that? Of course, I heard this information has been proven, that obviously it was the U.S. government with NATO. I mean, hell, even Biden said, we'll get rid of the pipeline if you invade. So the globalists are very reckless. Again, 50% chance the Pentagon said if they started bombing Russia, Russia would nuke. They still rolled the dice. So we need really cool heads here. This is not like going into Iraq twice. This is not like going into Libya. This is not a cakewalk. Even for people that love to, buy a bottle of bourbon and sit back and get drunk watching, a war like so many sick people do. This is the main threat to civilization. And I mean, Tucker, you really have all the connections. You travel the world. You cover these summits.
I don't know anything other than I think that people in charge of a bunch of different countries are like reckless on a level that's without precedent in the modern era. And I don't think they're serving their own people, by the way, leaders like that. It's not just like, you've got a bellicose leader who's threatening war or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean the people he rules are being served. He's putting their lives at risk. Our leaders have put our lives at risk for no good reason. And so, I'm hardly an expert in anything. I'm just an observer, and it's just also obvious. And I'm really worried about, my last question to you is, you get this sense that there's like a spirit of dullness or fantasy. Maybe it's connected to living digitally or something, but like smart, aware people are no longer smart or aware. They're sort of sleepwalking through this incredibly dangerous moment, and they don't even acknowledge any of it. And like, what is that?
Well, that was the description I was going to use.
There's like a mist that settles over all of us, and like we can't. It's like no one is even like awake. What is that?
Well, that's how I describe it. You describe it. We're sleepwalking into Armageddon. The Bible calls it a spell.
It feels that way.
Medically, they would call it a trance. And since the advent, I say that sarcastically, of television and everybody gathering around it, people are way more highly suggestible. Most people are closer to a near dream state or daydream state pretty much all the time.
It feels that way.
You go to a movie, you see everybody kind of drooling. and I've never really had a lot of suspended disbelief. Even when I was a kid, I was always analyzing things.
Me too.
And so I guess that's a gift, but also it's kind of torture. It'd be fun to just be able to be mindless sometimes. But yeah, and the establishment itself is all about never actually making a decision they get in trouble for, having committees, having groups, having it kind of be policy where no one can be accountable. But then that creates a runaway train scenario where then only the most reckless people that are the craziest kind of become the consensus because nobody else wants to challenge them. And through Trump and Elon, saying, hey, we don't want war. We don't want a meat grinder. This is too dangerous. This is crazy. We want to stabilize civilization. We want to have more kids, not less. Every actuary shows we collapse if we don't. Those are conscious. Look at Trump, conscious, awake, sharp. Elon, conscious, aware, sharp. So many others. And then it's a system of kind of quasi-zombies and zombies run by a few kleptocrat, psycho, demon-possessed people that don't want us waking up the zombies. So that's why they're mad at me. It's why they're mad at Elon. It's why they're mad at you, is that we are trying to collectively get people to wake up because the wheel on the ship is so heavy and so big. a few of us can't turn it. But if we get more people politically engaged and aware, together we're able to turn the wheel as we're about to go over this waterfall 5,000 feet and get killed. And so it's people that are dialed in and conscious versus people that are unconscious in the middle versus evil that is driven by a very nihilistic, destructive force. And that's what the transhumanism is about. I mean, I remember 30 years ago reading government white papers that were public that listeners sent me, medical people, that they had human-animal hybrids they could grow in cows for organ harvesting. And of course, that's been admitted for 20 years now. But just last week, hundreds of articles. Oh, we can grow humanoids for organ harvesting. Don't worry, though. They don't have consciousness. We've already raised them at undisclosed laboratories. And then it's in the MIT, reports that they've done it. Or I remember 30 years ago, military bases have goats that are part spider that produce body armor out of their milk, but we don't show them to you. And then later they brought them out. And then, we have dire wolves living in an undisclosed location where we spliced 13,000-year-old DNA with a regular wolf. And my point is, the future's been here for a while. It's just not evenly distributed. So you've got this super advanced sectors of technology, literally in underground bases and facilities. And you've got an establishment, a very small technocracy that's even aware of those systems.
Yes.
And they don't want to give the general population access to that. So to them, they want a nuclear war. They think it's survivable in their underground bases. And Ian Fleming, former high-level OSS in MI6, wrote the James Bond books, became movies. Remember the 80s Moonraker with Roger Moore. And remember, there's a crazy billionaire with these other billionaires with an underground base in Brazil that's going to release a bioweapon on the Earth to kill everybody, but it only goes for a year. He's going to go up to space while everybody dies on Earth at their space station and then come back and repopulate the Earth. And he's a eugenicist, and they only have the best specimens of the humans to do it. In the movie Zardoz with Sean Connery in the 70s, and Logan's Run, and The Island, and THX 1138. And then you have Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World in 1932. His brother, Julian Huxley, was the head of the World Eugenics Society. When that got a bad name for World War II, they changed the World Transhumanist Society. He was the Director General of UNESCO, really ran the UN. And his brother, before he died, gave that famous Berkeley speech. It's an hour long. And I've read his book, Brave New World Revisited, that's nonfiction. Everybody should read it. And he says, no. The world's not going to be like Orwell with the SWAT teams. That's for the 1% that might resist. The real plan, the reason I could write Brave New World, is this was the consensus of the elite in Europe and England of the world we're going to build with genetically engineered people, a subspecies that serves us, everyone taking soma, everyone's controlled. And he explains in that Berkeley speech, if you don't read the book, he gives a synopsis that this is a real plan that he saw being in place by 2020. And so you have to understand Brave New World is an instruction manual of what they want to do. They want to turn humans into a commodity. That's why Obama calls it the end of history, where there are no more cycles, where everything's controlled, where 90% of the world population is reduced. And maybe if you serve them right or whatever, the 10% is here, but there's these gods on Mount Olympus or these Elysium demigods that are the technocrats that control everything. And everybody is wired into their brains, and the technocrats control the AI, and then they play God. Like Ray Kurzweil said, I don't believe in God yet. I'm going to become one. Yuval Noah Harari, I don't believe in God yet, but there will be one in the cloud of AI. And so I'll just say this, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray, as the famous writer said. And these people are prideful, they're satanic.
Yes. And
it's all going to end in disaster. We have to choose God, we have to choose justice, we have to choose free will, and we have to get out of nature more, and we have to disconnect from the system's lies, and then only go into the system to basically tell the truth. And just know that if you're fighting evil, evil's going to come after you, but that's a blessing, and that it's very rewarding. And the experiences you have in that quest are the greatest experiences of my life. And you find out who's real, you find out who's not real. I just see the arrogance of these lawyers. It's warfare, it's lawfare, and through the agencies that are running them, and what they've done to me, they want to do to you. Like Trump said 1,000 times, they're not trying to get me; they got to get through me to get to you. That is true. And so that's why I do want to see action from the White House. I do want to see the Justice Department take action, because they felt like it's free game on me. just open season. They've been more transparent. I mean, it's illegal, in my view, to have the Justice Department fund these lawsuits. It's illegal to have the FBI go create these. It's illegal for Obama to list me as a national security terrorist and have a dragnet for decades. And then all of this concerted is the stalking. All of this concerted is the racketeering. And that's what it is by definition, conspiracy against rights. And then they're just sitting back laughing and going, oh, Trump, 40 million, to help poor people. We won't be political anymore. We're using it for Alex Jones. It's just these people need to be called on this. They operate in darkness. They operate because people are too busy. They operate thinking you're never going to figure out what they're doing. And more, they're scared. But I would have thought with all this coming out, they would back off. No, instead they've gotten scared because the Connecticut Supreme Court and all them were going to hear this. Now they said suddenly they reversed it. No, we're not hearing it now.
Yeah.
Because they think just shut him down, shut him up. It's not going to work if they shut down InfoWars. And I don't throw fights. I'm fighting right to the end. But if they're able to do that and everybody sees that, it's only going to make what I do that much bigger. But again, like when the establishment tried to kill Trump, that's when the establishment went from collapsing to collapsed. So their order's over. And I liken it in closing to Japanese soldiers, the last one, 27 years later, because the Japanese were losing in the Pacific, as you know, Tucker, they would dump soldiers out on islands to frustrate and harass the allies coming in, the U.S., England, and the Australians and the New Zealanders that fought the Pacific War. And so the last guy, 27 years later, was still on an island shooting at people and stuff, thinking that, he still had to fight for the emperor until he found out, no, the war's been over 27 years. So the radicalized death cult left, the Jacobins, are just running around like chickens with their heads cut off like zombies. Attack, attack, attack. Everyone's a Nazi. Cutting women off in traffic, getting out, beating up women because they're driving a Tesla, being proud of it. I mean, they have been radicalized into a cult. And that's what Klaus Schwab said. He said, we're going to collapse Western civilization by creating an angrier world. We've got to not target each other. We've got to target the policies and ideas of the globalists and dismantle the policies and have a big tent to unify behind stopping nuclear war.
You pray you live long enough to affect good in the world. And I definitely pray that for you. Alex Jones, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker, so much. You're the best.